Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. In tonight's instruction work group, we're going to hear from educators from across our district, focusing on the middle school level, early childhood, really leaning into the area of mathematics and that instruction. Before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to our superintendent, Dr. Joe Gothard.
Thank you very much. Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe. I move to approve the minutes from the instruction work group meeting dated April 7th, 2025.
Second, Maya.
Thank you so much, Board Vice President Pearson. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. That passes unanimously. And now I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow, members of the board, staff, and community participating tonight. We've got a great agenda to really capture a wide range of both topics that the Board of Education has been interested in, but also to represent the hard work of our staff this evening. So we've got a mix of our central office leaders, our school-based leaders that are going to introduce some work and some updates on work tonight, both in the area of mathematics, in college and career readiness, and in early learning. So we really get the full gamut tonight. We get early learning all the way to how we're helping our children and young people plan their futures. So instead of me going over the entire list, I think with this many of our colleagues presenting tonight, I'll turn it over to Cindy Green to set up tonight's presentation. If I could ask for each presentation, if we could please introduce our colleagues who are presenting tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gothard. Thank you, Chair Muldrow. I am really looking forward to our discussion and our dialogue tonight. This has been a topic that the Board of Education has really been interested in. So tonight we are going to start with an update on mathematics and an update on middle school programming. I'd like to take a minute and introduce our team before I jump into the slides. So we have Dr. Angie Hicks, who is our Associate Superintendent for Middle Schools. We have Mark Siegel, who is the instructional coach at Akira Toki Middle School. Shiba Mays, who is our proud principal of Akira Toki Middle School. Mary Jankovic, who's our Executive Director of Secondary Programs and Pathways. We have Nar, who's our middle school CTE specialist. Pam Waite, who is the principal of Spring Harbor Middle School. Carrie Ortega, who is in our audience, really supports all of middle school. We've got Kay Hunter here, who is our math teacher leader for middle school. And we also have Dr. Jeffrey Copeland, who is the proud principal of Senate Middle School, joining us via Zoom. The team tonight is going to, as I said, share some updates, and I'm really excited because we have three very different middle schools that are going to talk about their experiences and what that looks like at the local level and their local context. Spring Harbor is our magnet lottery school that really focuses on environmental education. Senate Middle School is one of our largest middle schools and has GLI programming. And then Toki Middle School is a neighborhood middle school that's also paired with an elementary school, so brings a really unique experience. Jessica, can you go to the slides, please? Next slide, please. As always, making sure we ground in our three strategic framework goals. I think you will see how all three of these goals are being uplifted in our middle school in the presentation we have tonight. Next slide. And a reminder to the Board of Education and to our community, these are our district improvement goals and where we would like to be by 2027. Tonight, I think you'll really hear more about the mathematics metrics versus the literacy metrics. In the fall, we talked a lot about literacy, and so tonight we're going to spend time in mathematics. And I think you'll also see how our goal 2 is being uplifted through some of our choices that students have in terms of programming, such as our CTE programming and our arts program. Next slide, please. And you could go on to the next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mary Jankovic, who's going to get us started. I just want to start off and say thank you to the wonderful staff and principals that have joined us this evening to highlight the middle school experience and more importantly, middle school students' identity as learners, to which you'll hear throughout this presentation tonight. So we have a few outcomes for tonight, and the first one focusing on district materials. We know that the board has made significant investment in our district materials, and you're going to see those highlighted through the presentation tonight, followed by prioritizing grade level learning and intentionality to programming offered tonight, which specifically you will hear about CTE, the arts, and the Hmong Heritage Program. Next slide, please. We wanted to talk a little bit about middle school intentionality and the prioritizing of grade level learning, specifically calling out learning walks and the emphasis for a time for teaching and learning and action, core practices, which will highlight high quality work, how we establish common language and expectations to the reality of what that looks like, sounds like, and feels like in a middle school classroom. Professional learning, we have aligned around the learning and knowledge of skills and resources available to increase student outcomes. We have redefining rigor, which is ensuring students are challenged in meaningful ways that navigate our very complex world. Standards-based common assessments around consistent data routines with literacy and numeracy, and common planning, to which you'll hear the alignment of instructional approaches, collaboration, and collectively review of student data. Right now, I am pleased to introduce our CTE specialist, Nar Doumbaya, who is going to talk to you about CTE expansion.
Thank you, Mary. When we began our CTE work in MMSD in the fall of 2021, we immediately started a comprehensive assessment of our CTE programming at the middle school. Through that process, we found that the majority of our CTE programming were heavily concentrated in 4 middle schools, and that was Cherokee Middle School, Gillespie, Hamilton, Toki, which all had combinations of engineering, skilled trade, information technology, and family consumer science. For us, that was a really big equity challenge, and our team started working right away to make sure that we start expanding CTE all the school in all the middle school. Senate at that time had 1 family and consumer science program, and what this meant was that we had cohorts of students going into East High School, into La Follette High School, and Shabazz, who did not have that CTE experience at the middle school level. So in response, we launched the CTE middle school RFP, and as a result, we started programs every year. Some of these programs are in their initial phases. Our goal is to make sure that we have middle school CTE at all the middle schools. As you will see in this slide, we started with a few programs, and this upcoming year we'll have over 55 CTE course sections in 15 CTE programs across 9 middle school. We know that we still have some work to do. We have 3 middle school that do not have CTE right now. And one of our goals is to really, in the next 2 years, engage with leadership at those schools to better understand what CTE could potentially look like in those programs, and also how we can bring these amazing experiences to their students. Another goal that we have for middle school is to expand our career and technical organizations. Right now, we have those in our high school. And if you had the chance to go to a Skills USA, for example, in middle school and watch these students who really have the opportunity to expand, go deep into their passion, that's what we want for our middle school students. Just that ability to learn, to discover, and then make really informed decisions about their high school experience, and we want to continue that. Next slide, please. While we have been also expanding middle school, focusing on programming, we've also been really focused on curriculum. We had done a lot of work with our teachers, worked together and revamped our curriculum. We started kind of aligning our curriculum more and had dedicated middle school staffing, programming, and we've increased collaboration time and collaboration time. Our teachers now has robust resources. We've been investing in the tools of the trades. We've been investing in 3D printers, laser engravers, all these tools that our middle school student could use, get familiarized themselves with, and then find those the same at their high school and beyond. I also wanted to share a little bit about summer programming. This is the third year we have this program and it's been expanding. What's really truly special about the summer program is the ability we have to bring all these students from across the district in these programs. Last year, for example, we had 28 schools, 16 elementary school, 50, all the 12 middle school, which was really good to see. Also, when I think about our CTE middle school student, I think about just the experience that we can provide for them. These students are really passionate, and I think the more intentional we are in providing these accredited focus growth, the better we are. We have been really proud of this work that we've been doing at the middle school level because we know that a CTE is for all students, and when it's done well, it increases student engagement, it strengthens all content area, and also it supports the transition into high school. One story that I want you all to think about is a story that happens usually in Toki in middle school. We have students at the elementary school, Orchard Ridge, who are being mentored by our CTE students at Toki. And these students get the chance to really engage with our middle school. And imagine a student who is at Orchard Ridge, then goes to Toki, has 3 years of experimenting and learning the engineering design process. When she goes to high school, what we're hearing from our high school teachers, oh yeah, we know those students who are coming from Toki because they come prepared, they come really ready to be leaders in our program. And I think that that's the story that we want in CTE, giving our students the opportunity to really experience and engage with the material so that they're ready for high school and beyond too. So thank you. As you can all imagine, we're really proud of this work. We think it's intentional and it's equity focused. And we will also be coming to the operation board meeting to ask for more support. Thank you.
Next slide.
So I'm going to highlight a little bit about the arts. Our art department is super excited as they've been working directly with communications, and we have a new informational page that will update often around recent news headlines and features a calendar available to the public. So we're very excited about that. As you can see, we have Disney musicals in schools such as Senate. We were fortunate enough to have Dowry Ruiz, a hip hop artist and musician, social activist, working in almost all 12 of our middle schools this year, as he's done his residency through the UW-Madison and directly working with our MMSD folks. We have the the Hamilton Choir, which is the only middle school chosen from across the state for the Capitol Concert Series. We have the Young Playwrights for Change happening in many of our middle schools, and also the front and back cover winners for Dane County Anthology were directly from MMSD. So highlighting some of the great works our arts department is doing. Next slide. As we all know, we're one of 5 school districts in the nation that has a Hmong Heritage program. Next year, we will be in full implementation. I do want to raise that just a few weeks ago, we were able to host the Hmong Summit, where we had partners from St. Paul and Fresno here as we were planning on 25, 26. We were very excited around our partnership. And with that, I would like to introduce Cam Waite, our principal of Spring Harbor School.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here tonight. My goal tonight is to talk about systems of support that are really critical to ensuring success for our middle level learners. We know that there are unique needs of middle level students that we must meet in order to ensure optimal academic growth. We must also be addressing social emotional needs, in particular of safety, competence, relationships, autonomy, and fun. Middle school is a time of intense curiosity, exploration, and development, and that's what we tried to do at Spring Harbor, to develop a system and a schedule that allows for that exploration. I do have to say, and you might hear me reference several times, the element of student voice, because that is critical. Our mission at Spring Harbor is to really ensure that our students see themselves as agents of change and that they do have power to impact the world around them. And that includes the world of their school, their home school community. Thank you. Next slide. So starting with our schedule, we have a kind of a unique schedule for middle school in which we do start, we're wolves, so you might hear me reference wolf related themes. Our pack time is our homeroom advisory, and we use that time, they meet 5 days a week, and we use that time for connecting, building relationships, opportunities for choice reading and sharing great books with each other, executive functioning skills, and social emotional learning. We then break our day up into a core block and a UA block in the morning and a core block of academics and UA in the afternoon, centered around our hour-long lunch, which is unique to our building. During that hour-long lunch, again, we feel that yes, our students are going to be pushed with rigor and academics in their classes, and they need space to grow, to experiment, to take risks, to get to know each other, and to explore their interests. And then our hour-long lunch allows that time to do that. During that time, we offer clubs. We are not a neighborhood school, so that is a bit of a challenge sometimes for our school. And we have not had strong MSER programming. Exception this year, they are phenomenal rock stars. I love them to death. Really flying this year. But we introduced clubs during our noon hours. So our teachers build really strong relationships with students because they're running clubs. And the clubs are driven by student interest and student voice. Had a cheese club a few years ago. Lots of kids interested in cheese, just want to be able to get together. Cheese, yep.
Okay, I want to just make sure I heard that right. Okay.
Also, obviously, time to get outside, get some vitamin D from the sun, running, moving around. They love to work in the gardens, play with the chickens. They have those opportunities. And we have office hours. All of our teachers have office hours twice a week. And during that time, they can meet with students that maybe have been absent or maybe who they notice were struggling with a concept in their class. Instead of pulling them from another class and interfering with another class, they can do that during lunch. And our students are really showing, this is year 3 of the schedule, really starting to show their own agency in their learning by coming up. For example, if I'm on the playground, Mrs. Wade, tell me when it's the second half of lunch. I got to remember to go to office hours and I want to meet that teacher. Talk about putting them in the driver's seat of their learning. Also built into our day, we have targeted support daily. So our students are able to get the support that they need to address their learning needs that is delivered by their core teachers who know them the best. And so it's daily for literacy, every other day for math, opposite and every other day opportunity to dive deeper into science concepts in alignment with who we are as a school. We also believe as we watch our students preparing for 8th grade and not having a lot of CTE exposure in our school, the struggles the students have in thinking through, what do I take? I'm overwhelmed with all these choices. So ways that we've tried to address it at Spring Harbor include using Zello for students to explore careers of interest, the 7th grade experience with Future Quest, Avid college visits, guest speakers, We also do a career day in 8th grade where we invite UW plastic surgery in. They teach students how to do sutures. And then our students, you see a picture here of one of our students. We get VR headsets and our students get to explore like literally saving a victim on a car crash scene. Whatever career path they want, they can actually hands-on virtual practice in that career. I mentioned student leadership. The fact that we have these noon hour clubs have allowed that opportunity for student leadership and voice to really flourish at Spring Harbor through those clubs such as Student Council, Latino Club, Black Student Union, and AVID. And then finally, I just want to give a shout out to our coaches across the district because all of this work and the support and the work our teachers do wouldn't be possible for the strong partnership they have with our coaches and support that they receive. Really building data literacy with our teachers and helping our teachers to see that they are not alone in this work. So I just want to again, thank you. I really feel that the intentionality of our systems, we really work to provide opportunity for that exploration, which is critical for our middle level learners. Student voice, exploration, strong guidance and support leads them to higher academic achievement, responsible citizenship, and early consideration of future careers. Thank you.
So at this time, we have Dr. Copeland. He joining us virtually to share a little bit about Senate Middle School and really focusing on CTE and the arts. You with us, Dr. Copeland?
Dr. Copeland, you're on mute.
Okay, let's start that over. I said you said it wrong. That says the Senate stars. I call them the senators. So, good afternoon, good evening. I'm glad to be here with you. I thank the board for allowing us this opportunity, the superintendent and all that's with him here today. When we talk about CTE, let's talk about it. You know, we talk about college technical education, an opportunity for our students, an opportunity for our students to be equipped with 21st century strategies that can help propel them to the next level. When we talk about those strategies, let's talk about how they complement what we do in our everyday with our core classes. So when we talk about 21st century strategies, we talk about collaboration. We use them throughout the day when kids are working and teaching each other and have an opportunity to see what one knows and what I can teach you and what you can teach me. That's when teachers release that lesson so the students can work together and collaborate. And it also helps our kids to learn how to communicate better. A lot of times our students have problems knowing how to communicate. So given the opportunity to have this time, students are communicating better because they're learning this strategy through CTE. And the most important one I like is being able to think critically. Our students need the opportunity to be able to sit back, relax, and process and ponder on the ideas in which they come up with. And during CTE, they get this opportunity. They come up with a wide range of ideas. When it comes to coding, whatever they're doing, they have the great opportunity to learn that. And being creative. We talked about the musical. Man, if you missed a musical that we had at Senate, you missed a show. 3 full houses. And our students showed out. I was thinking about it yesterday saying I myself was impressed to hear our students sing and show their creativity. And I was looking for a paper in their hand to read their script, and they knew it all. They memorized each and every one of their lines. This tells us our kids can learn. We just have to give them the opportunity. And being able to troubleshoot. Our students need to be able to troubleshoot their own problems. We need to step back and let them move forward. During CTE, they get these opportunities because there's so many things they get to work on and be creative with and also problem solve. The problem is just not sitting there for playing. We must plan through CTE on our regular schedule. We must plan around it. We must look and see what do we need to do to make sure we have enough courses that's going to attract our students' attention, to make them feel good about coming to school each and every day. Therefore, improving attendance, graduation rate, and making it possible for students to have a great educational journey. Our students deserve this opportunity. CTE at CTE, we're going to focus on the skills, not the thrills. I want you to know at Senate Middle School, we're looking forward to a brand new school. And during that new school, we want to make sure we have a school that mimics everything that they have over there in the Folly. So if they have large engine repair, we want to have small engine repair. We want to make sure our children feel good about everything that they can do when they go to high school. Sometimes they get lost in the sauce because they're like, wow, we have so many opportunities in high school. Why don't we get to be explored in middle school? So I thank you all so much. Remember, CTE stands tall, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Copeland. Please hang around because there'll be questions, I'm sure, from the Board of Education. Can you go to the next slide, please, Jesse? So now we want to spend some time really digging into math at middle school. Some of the areas that we're going to focus on are some of the leadership moves that have really been addressed and put into place the last 2 years to focus on student growth. We'll talk about the Math Expo. We're going to hear from Toki Middle School, and we're going to talk about our math task force. Before I introduce Kay Hunter, I'm just going to ground us in some data. Jesse, next slide, please. So as we have this conversation around math, we thought it would be important to look at some data that focuses on when students and where students are able to earn high school while in middle school. You may recall that it's a state statute that students in 7th and 8th grade are able to earn high school credit for a high school equivalent course, as long as it meets the set criteria set forth by the statute. And so right now you'll see 5 years worth of data around our middle school students that are accessing algebra or higher and those participation rates. And you can see over the last 5 years, we've really increased across all student groups, those that are taking algebra or higher before they leave middle school. When a student takes a high school credit bearing course before they leave middle school, they're not only getting the exposure to the coursework, but they're also earning high school. You can see that we're doing a better job than we have, and there's a lot of work still to be done. Kay Hunter is going to talk a lot about the areas of improvement that we have, and also where we are seeing areas of opportunity to continue to focus on to build the math skills in every one of our students. So I'll turn it over to Kay.
Good evening, everybody. I am really excited to be part of this work, and I really also appreciate the opportunity to speak to it. I will be sharing the leadership moves I've made in service of students over the last 2 years. It was really critical that I grounded in data. We reviewed MMSD, Wisconsin, and national data to understand where we are. When reviewing our rates of achievement, I knew that our students and all of us who serve them were capable of more with the right support and resources. One thing I want to bring us back to is with the interruption of COVID, the challenges of virtual learning and so on, we needed to reset to have a common understanding of DPI's grade level standards and deep learning. Our challenges in achievement could not be solved one person at a time. We had to approach this as a cohesive system across all the middle schools, and that has been the focus over the last 2 years, especially to provide coherence and alignment for our students who move. I engaged in research and standards calibration to be able to precisely name where we want to be. Grounded by the research and practices from the National Standards Institute that I had the privilege to attend, that Mary and my boss Carrie sent me to last summer, I really began to bring us back to understanding the 3 shifts of math within standards. These are coherence, rigor, and focus. These words are used a lot in education. Throughout classrooms, across the district, you'll hear them used a lot, but what we found is we did not have a common understanding or a common definition that we all work from, and so that's what really needed attention. An example of this is around rigor. In mathematics, it is a misunderstanding that rigor is simply doing difficult work or speeding up the pace of learning. When the Standards Institute taught me, and the 3 shifts also state that rigor is first defined by conceptual understanding. Students need to truly understand and speak to the math they are learning so that concepts can continue to build each year. Without the solid conceptual understanding, application, another aspect of rigor, suffers. And that's the whole point of teaching math. This is why students are sitting in math class, is for students to be able to apply what they've learned beyond the school life to use that understanding to critically examine and improve our world. Procedural skills are the last aspect of rigor that I want to address. Students must be accurate and fluent so that they can put the bulk of their cognitive energy into application, which is the real world math. I'll go back to my leadership moves now. I reviewed our current math resources and then refined them to align with that research. This included creating common standards-based assessment district-wide for educators to use. This helps with our mobility data. All students are addressing the same standards no matter what school that they are in. I also worked on revamping the district's scope and sequence to ensure that standards-based resources were readily accessible for our educators. Our students' needs are deep in middle school. It is a critical time for them. So that meant it was critical that we built a collective identity as an MMSD math community to support each other and work on behalf of students together as one, as opposed to being individual schools. A key takeaway from the research is positive math identity. All of those moves I've described are in support of putting pieces together for staff to support students in building just that. Can we move to the next slide, please? My t-shirt, we had a math expo on Friday. My work as a leader is to lift others. Truly inspired by the community of educators we have in middle school math. Working to create a positive math community and identity within our educators is part of that lift. The common learning that our middle school math teachers engaged in that I just described then culminated in our teacher-led math expo this past Friday during our designated math PD time. The math expo was built on our year's learning based on the 3 shifts. One thing that was important for me was that we would all be grounded in the same learning, regardless of how long you had been in the district. So we went back to focus. We went back to really understanding coherence, which leads to scaffolding and rigor. This PD was designed to bring together the Common Core standards and our innovative educators to provide high impact resources and hand-on strategies to elevate math instruction and engage students in meaningful ways. Educators needed the space and time to talk about instructional moves that they are making in their classrooms and to bring the standards to life. Educators volunteered to present to their community best practices, research-based theories. We had members of the task force, who I'll talk about later, who also presented. All of this was voluntary time that teachers did on top of their own school workload. It was so exciting that the synergy growing in middle school math teachers, the math task force is all coming together around what we are learning and gaining from one another as we build our community identity and knowledge as educators. We are better poised to build students' identities as math teachers when we, as a whole MMSD, have a collective identity as math teachers. Now we'll hear from Toki Middle School to understand how this work has shown up in schools.
Good evening, everyone. Eva Mays, principal at Toki Middle School, joined here by Mark Siegel, my instructional coach at Toki Middle School. So leadership moves have happened at Toki to meet our students' needs in math. And as Kay Hunter mentioned, when we make these moves and we make these decisions, ensuring that our decisions are data-based or data-driven is very key. Key with the goal of students having access and success in high school math in their higher level math courses.
So some of the shifts that we made with our math plan that focused on grade level standard were based on our analysis of our math screener data through iReady, looking at student class choice as they shifted from our 8th grade into high school, and then even looking at our math trends post-COVID. Because a lot of the math choices that were made were pre-COVID, and the needs that you're seeing from students were very different. And we need to make sure that we're meeting those needs as learners and as students. So using our data, we set a goal of building a stronger and deeper grade level standards and a stronger foundation in math. And using the data, it's then looking at it now of what does it look like for student self-identity in the math classroom, and then continuing to monitor that throughout this year and helping students have a pathway throughout math that is based on their needs and based on the data, whether it's from 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th, and then 8th moving into high school and beyond.
So an intentional move that we have in place is that intentional collaboration time, or that common planning time that is very much protected for collaboration with Kay Hunter and our math teachers. And so as Mark mentioned, it is basically for our ability to gain deeper understanding of our grade level standards, and then unpacking the 6th grade, the 7th grade, to kind of understand how those standards build into future classes and future experiences that our students will have in math.
Another key piece of this is lifting up the student voice and family voice as well. So listening to our students who were in algebra as they transitioned to high school to what they had to say. And then also having students take ownership over who they are as mathematicians and being proud of the growth that they make. So that looks like conferences in fall and winter, students presenting to their families, here are my strengths as mathematicians, along with through literacy and talking about their goals throughout the year and how they plan to grow. And winter, being able to share the growth that they've made as they focus on grade level standards, and then talking about their path moving forward. Having families have a voice in that as well. We've invited families in beyond conferences to talk about, here is our goals as a school in our math plan from 6 through 8, and how does that support students as they move into high school and beyond. Here's where we were, our historical data, and here's where we are right now in that journey. We also use that data and listen to students as we have flexible groupings during our extension, or some schools call it win time, of really focusing on what our student needs and making sure that we're doing our best to address those needs during that time.
And so the impact of our leadership move or moves, students have stronger foundational skills. Our math screener data is stronger, and that's among all students. And so students who identify as Black, students with IEPs, students who are multilingual, those groups who have historically not shown math growth have shown growth. And so we can also see it in how our students are engaged in the classroom. They're in the classrooms and not avoiding the classroom, and the conversations among them with staff, their friends, and their families.
Next slide, Jasmine.
The Math Task Force is what I'm going to talk to you about now. The Math Task Force consists of 41 members, which includes 12 central office workers. Collectively, we represent 22 schools in the district, including UW-Madison, who we partnered with. And we also have a board member from the National Council of Math Teachers, aka NCTM, which you'll hear me use throughout the rest of this presentation on this slide. The leadership team for this group consists of myself, my boss, Carrie Ortega, middle school implementation specialist, Quinn Marks, the K-5 STEM director, Dr. Amy Sheridan, Advanced Learning Director, and Dr. Mai Vang, K-5 math teacher leader. Beyond the work of the schools and central office, we knew it was key to bring together a larger group of stakeholders to both learn and collaboratively move us forward. This piggybacks back on what I said about before, looking at the data and seeing where we are. The Math Task Force was created to engage in learning to craft a coherent 4K through 12 approach to teaching mathematics, as opposed to individual divisions looking at where they were. We wanted to make sure that it's engaging, rigorous, and grounded in evidence, and leads our students to build a positive math identity. We want the outcome of the learning of this group to impact classrooms and result in not only our students being prepared to take high-level math courses and succeed in them, but build positive math identity, which you've heard us say a lot as we talk about math, where what this means is they can see themselves as math learners. Positive math identity happens when a student feels confident and capable in math. But what is really important that I have to get across about math identity is that students understand that making mistakes is part of learning. The group has been reading Catalyzing Change, written by NCTM, National Council of Math Teachers, to inform our decision-making. The book has multiple versions that apply to early childhood, elementary, middle school, and high school. We focused our understanding on the recommendations of NCTM and then planning to implement those recommendations within our MMSD context. Next slide, please. Lastly, this slide describes the flow of our work. We have spent the year focusing on the three of the 4 recommendations from the National Council of Math Teachers. The first recommendation that we focused on was broadening the purposes of learning mathematics. The second recommendation we focused on was creating equitable structures in mathematics. And the third one was to implement equitable mathematics instruction. Our next meeting in the next week will finalize our recommendations and action steps, and then continue planning throughout the summer and working on recommendation 4. We want to thank you in advance for the support that you have provided this task force, and we really are excited for the future work that will benefit students from this task force.
Okay, so that was a little insight into all of our 12 middle schools, spotlight into 3 of our middle schools, and then a little more detail as it relates to math. So I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Muldrow, and excited to engage in a conversation.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Cindy Green, for highlighting at the beginning of the presentation that the board has expressed an interest in investing strategically at the middle school level over the course of years unanimously. So this is a first opportunity to have a conversation that I think most of us believe should be really expansive, both when we're talking about math and when we're talking about middle schools. With that being said, I've seen 3 board members with their hands up already, so I am going to start with Board Member Vander.
Thank you very much, Chair Muldrow. My questions, sorry, I wrote them down, are we hear a lot about teacher class hours like office hours and working on groups and that night. I appreciate it. I like the extra time, but I'm curious, are the teachers offered any incentive pay or anything regarding that during that practice?
Yeah, no, that is not the case, but our teachers they were part of this schedule format. We actually first used a format like this when we were virtual, came back to a traditional model after, and our kids are like, you off your rocker. We like that, go back to that. And our teachers agreed with that as well. They recognize that teachers are going to provide that support in one way, shape, or another. What our schedule allows us to do is to do that without interfering with their prep time. And it doesn't interfere by pulling students out of other classes. So they're not missing learning from other classes to be able to meet with a teacher during their prep period. So it's just part of who we are as a school and what everybody buys into.
I kind of like the not losing your prep period. That was my next question. And I really think that because that's what I hear a lot is I don't have enough prep time, and that's what I was worried about. And I think that is actually interesting. My second question actually is more for Cindy and for everyone actually. And that is, we keep hearing from teachers as well as students that 4:30 is an awful late end time to the middle school day. Are we still looking at possibly changing that at some point?
Thank you for the question, Board Member Vandermeulen. For next year, the end time will stay the same. We've locked in with where we are with our transportation company. I think that at some point, maybe it's a conversation to explore later on, but for the 25-26 school year, we'll stay at the 4:25 for this year.
And my last question is actually on the math identity. It's not a question, it's a comment. As someone who has been someone who thought I was bad at math for years until I had someone who showed me that mistakes were okay. I have to honestly agree with the belief of having a math identity. Originally, I'm thinking, what is that? But no, it's so easy to psychologically think. And for years, I thought, no, I'm just bad at this. And it did really cloud my thinking. So I do appreciate that. And that's all my questions, Chair.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Board Member Vandermeulen. I saw Board Vice President Pearson and then Board Member Who is it? Sorry. Oh, okay, so then board member Castro and then board Purcell.
Okay, thank y'all for y'all presentation. Sorry, it's a little tardy. My question is just around the slide. The high school algebra and higher participation. Do we know the number of students? So we have more students participating in algebra or higher, but how many students actually successfully complete it? And then move on to high school and take that next course, or are we seeing students take the middle school course and then maybe take it again in high school, or like what are we seeing in terms of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think anecdotally, we're seeing a little bit of everything that you just said. I think we're seeing students that are very successful and are passing algebra, earning the credit and going on and going to the next course. I think we're seeing some students that are taking the course and not having success based on some of the things Kay mentioned in terms of missing some of those previous and prerequisite skills that are essential. And then I think we're seeing some students that and their families making the decision to retake that same course again in high school. We right now are working with our research assessment and improvement team to look at those trends in terms of what's happening post middle school. What are students taking in high school, and then what are they doing beyond that freshman year to see that success? We had a lot of momentum right as COVID hit, and so now we're trying to be able to capture kind of this more long-term rates to see what's happening. So I think we're seeing a little bit of all of the above.
All right, I just have experience as a parent with twins in algebra in 8th grade. So it's like that, and I know that they have their own class for algebra specifically at their school. Is that the case across all middle schools? Do they have their own class, their own teacher, or is it more so depending on how many students a pull out?
No, I think, and I'll look to Carrie and Kay also, but I think every one of our middle schools offers algebra as a course, as long as there's 15 students. We have a high school certified math teacher in every one of our middle schools. After algebra, I think then it is dependent on the number of students. We have some students accessing through MVC, which is Madison Virtual Campus. And again, depending on the school, we have principals here, so principals can answer also from their local level. Shiva, I don't know if you want to add to that, or if that sounds accurate.
That is accurate.
So it's if there are like 15 students within the school to take algebra, but if there's less than 15 students, say there's like 12 or 10, are we then still doing that in one class, or are we still moving them into possibly doing the?
We have a range of kind of like a continuum. Our advanced learning team has kind of built out what that looks like. If it's less than 15, it's very rare, as you know, that we would at middle school less than 15 below class size policy. So it is dependent, and it can fluctuate year to year, but we always try and ensure at the middle school principal hires a math certified, high school certified teacher so that they can teach. Pam, you're a small school, so I don't know if you want to add anything to.
Yeah, I would say the same.
Yeah.
We moved staff around to be able to accommodate that
Yeah.
licensure.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's good to hear, because I know that when I started on the board, there were a lot less students who were taking algebra. And it's good to see like those numbers have increased significantly in the last couple of years. There was the disparity of where algebra was being taken at the schools across the system and like who was taking it. And I'm sure there'll probably be board members that will mention that later, but that is my question for now.
Thank you.
Board member Castro?
Hey, thank you. Yeah, so I have two questions. The first one is that I definitely appreciate learning more about our CTE programming at the middle school level. One wondering I had though is if it might come at the expense of like more holistic character development, particularly through extracurricular participation, so students can explore their passions, interests, and hobbies and experiment with different things. So I'm wondering if we can kind of talk about how we're investing in those as well.
Want to talk about the CT itself, so.
So the career and technical student organizations are a little different from what you would traditionally see in CTSO. These are extensions of classroom learning, and students really get to engage in the content area. So it's not like they are just doing project. For example, they are designing a specific object and they go through the design process, and then they have their design logs, and they do and compete and measure. And sometimes with the CTSO, they do go to their local competitions, and then they go to their national competitions, sometimes international. So it's a little more advanced. It's a little more rigorous than what you would see traditionally in a club, for example. So these are very structured, and they're tied to the curriculum that's taught in the content area, for example.
Okay, yeah, I guess my one comment to that is I would hope in the future that we look at more holistic character development for students, particularly at this age. So my next question is, I wonder if y'all can speak more to how standards-based grading helps aids us in teaching math at the middle school level.
I'm Carrie Ortega. I support our core content areas in middle schools and MMSD. So Kate talked a little bit about the needs of our students being greater than each individual teacher being able to figure that out. We need to be really clear what grade level instruction is so that we know what happens in kindergarten is built upon in first grade, second grade, and beyond. Part of our challenge has been when folks are using differing resources and different ideas around what standards are, you cannot get that cohesion and synergy across the grade levels. I've had the privilege of working across all 3 levels in MMSD. And when we're on different pages of what we're using and what we're teaching, it shows up in different ways across each level. You can imagine for high school teachers, I think of our Wright middle school where 13 of our elementary schools feed into that or have students at that one school. If you are teaching different standards and different skills across elementary schools, what do you do then when you bring kids together in 6th grade? So this idea of being very clear about how our programming builds starting in pre-K all the way through 12th grade is really what the research in math tells us provides the greatest access points to that higher level learning, including higher level algebra and beyond.
Thank you so much, Board Member Castro. Now hear from Board Member Shamaro. So Rava.
It's okay. I had a few questions that were down, so I'm still playing catch up a little bit too. At the very beginning, I was wondering, how are you getting feedback from the students that are involved in the CTE over the years? Since it's been going on for a while, I was wondering if that is being, yeah.
So with CTE, we do have an exit survey that students take after they graduate. And it tells us where they are, where they're going to study and how they're doing. With the summer program, we do have an exit survey. So all students will engage in it. Parents, we have been asking them for feedback. For example, this year, the majority of the camps that newly developed camp were as a direct result of students telling us, we want a general career exploration camp, for example, instead of having to go through 3 different skill trade camps. We also had students tell us, we want a more advanced robotic course rather than this is very basic. So we do get student feedback. In general, in regular classrooms, teachers are ongoingly asking students for feedback on their learning, and they're using that feedback to support them during instruction too.
I'll just add one additional thing. It's Sherman and Blackhawk, who are both adding CTE programming next year. It has come about not only because of the work we're trying to do across all of our schools, but it has come specifically from students in terms of what they want, specifically around robotics or IT, engineering, and all. So the students have said these are the courses they want, and we are building it.
You're showing like the skills in like the trade section too. Like, do you guys have a natural connection to Operation Fresh Start? Or do they get, do they learn about it at all to have some sort of connection to it ongoing since they're?
Yeah, I can take that. Yeah, we have a partnership with Operation Fresh Start.
Yeah.
And so we are trying to create more what I would call a proactive entrance into Operation Fresh Start. Our high schools just built construction labs, which is amazing. And those construction labs are where we have a lot of students that are interested. And so we're trying to get students to think about if this is kind of the pre-apprentice route they want to go to get them into Operation Fresh Start as a choice versus as a default. I would say it's still a work in progress, but we have this relationship, and Brian McMahon, who is now the head of Operation Fresh Start, and us are working closely to think about that differently and when students can enter in, based on what students are experiencing 9th and 10th grade in some of those CTE classes.
Okay. I think I got 2 more written down here. On the graph for math, when you have students, when you're putting students on there, the students that are twice exceptional, how are they identified on the graph? Because there's students with IEPs and then students that are above. Where do they land?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't have the data broken out by twice exceptional on this graph. We do have the data available to share with the board. I don't know off the top of my head what that might look like, but we've presented in twice exceptional data before.
Just unique. It's a lot for families to take in. Sometimes I don't know if families who do that often get enough support, because there's just a lot going on with them. So I had one more. Oh, also like with the math expo, I'm just kind of alignment with the students who have more IEPs or lean a little bit more of adaptive learning. Do you have, when I was looking at who's part of the people that are more involved in there, also someone that's working on
The CC part,
what does that stand for?
the cross-categorical teacher.
Yeah.
Yes, from Toki. It was an intentional move, that it wasn't just all our regular ed teachers. We did include, a special ed teacher in there as well. And I did make sure also that she actually led the majority of our 6th grade group. Because it was really important for me that all teachers got to see that inclusion is important, collaborating with our CC team is important.
I just like the one as a parent, my daughter runs on a different level, especially in math. Be kind of hard to have that crossover or that inclusionary factor in there. And it's often a very, very different experience in math while also making progress at the same time. So something that the teachers, I don't know if they get to cross paths as much. So great, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Board President Nichols.
Thank you, Chair Muldrow. Let me get my hand out. I have 2 questions that are related to CTE and 2 questions that are related to the mathematics. First, let me just start with an appreciation for hearing from all of you about all of the work that's happening in our middle schools. I really appreciate it. For CTE, I think one of the things that came up for me as I was listening to you is wondering, are we still doing any version of academic and career planning, so ACP with students? And if so, as students are talking about careers that they're interested in, do we have the ability or the capacity to make some of those more personalized connections to their interests with CTE, or are we still in a place where students have to kind of self-direct to those?
You want me to talk? Okay, and then I think a couple of our principals, too, I know Pam talks about it. I would say yes, and so academic and career planning is still alive and well in all of our middle schools and our high schools. I think we've gotten a more robust approach in terms of college and career readiness. Our advisory across our middle schools is a key place for that. I think the voice and choice, and Dr. Copeland can talk about this too. I think voice and choice is happening at our middle schools, and I still think there's limitations. We're trying to get to a place of exploration across all of our middle schools, not just in our coursework, but also in our experiential learning. So how do we get students to learn what they don't know around career options and have more job shadows, have more learning about the vast careers? We just had a conversation today talking about UW Health, and UW Health offers probably every position you could ever imagine beyond just healthcare. And so we're getting, I think, again, I hate to use the word COVID, but we're getting to a place now where the partnership with our businesses, kind of movement in our schools, is getting us back to having a more robust approach. And there's still limitations based on it being very individualized and what we have capacity for and what we have access to. But I'll see if either Dr. Copeland or Pam or Sheba want to talk about that a little more in terms of what they see at their individual schools.
As we're getting more intentional with our ACP and making sure our students, when we use our goals, then our students let us know exactly what they want to do. And when they're having these conversations, we incorporate what's going on with them so we can prepare them. So if they say they want to be a chef, we definitely want to guide them to our CTE program. We talk about our family consumer science, and we're trying to make sure we match them and lead them to the right direction. They don't have to find it by themselves. We want to give them the right tools to make sure that they know we are a guiding party. We'll guide them to their destiny and make sure they have a good educational experience.
Yeah, I would say Zello is our college and career platform. We pull that data all the time. We were looking at it when we had the Ed Academy to see kids that they might be interested in education when we have other opportunities. So we're still pulling data on a regular basis. But Pam or Sheba, if you want to add to that, or Nar.
Yeah, I wanted to add that also in all our CTE programs at the middle school level, for academic and career connection, one of our standards that all our middle school CTE programs do spend a lot of time and guiding students. Students are exploring, for example, in engineering, different sides of engineering, different careers, and putting a plan to figure out if this is what they want, and they're going on field trips. So it's not just learning about engineering, but also having these interface with industry partners to really make informed decisions about the demands, the expectations, and if this is something that they would want to explore in high school. And they make these connections with the high school teachers too in the feeder patterns to ensure that they visit the space, they know what the tools and technology look like. So it's a very hands-on career exploration rather than just learning about it.
Great, thank you. Can somebody just really quickly, this wasn't one of my original questions, but what is the data that's in Zello? Because I guess when you're saying that you're pulling data out of Zello all the time, what's in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Zello is a college and career platform and students do interest inventories all the time. And they put their,
Oh,
so as they go into high school, they put their 4-year planning in there. They start thinking about their resumes. They start looking at colleges of interest. And so throughout 6th through 8th grade, students start to do these kind of assessments, self-assessments and interest inventories. And it shows what they're interested in and it shows what. And so we use that data to see who might be interested in X career area to again continue to further this idea of exploration and point.
great. Thank you.
Mhm.
My second CTE related question is, you said that there are still 3 schools that don't have CTE. First, let me just say kudos for expanding. Why do we still have 3 schools that don't have it? I think I'm more interested in like, what's the big barrier? What are you learning about challenges with expansion? Is there something at the board level that we just to have a better understanding of like what it means to like have identified kind of an inequity and then trying to like work towards
Also,
mitigating it?
but
Yeah,
then we have one of our principals here, so it'll be great, but I'll start and I want to clarify. Of the 3 that don't, one is Badger Rock and that's almost by design. So Badger
Okay.
Rock has a new culinary space that they do a lot of cooking and exploration. Their project-based learning approach
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily lend itself to have our formalized CTE programming.
okay,
But Spring Harbor is one of our schools that does not yet have CTE, so I think Pam can answer that and then we can talk about some other things, but I think it's great for Pam to answer being here.
Yeah, and I would just say we have a strong interest in that. I think one of the challenges and barriers in particular for small school is that often when you're gonna be offering something, you're gonna be offering one section. And it's really, really hard to staff that and hire for that. And so one of the things that we've tried to do at our building is to just try to find experience. How can we expose students to various experiences that just open up thoughts and ideas to their future for them? And I would love to chat more about ways to possibly partner with the community, with our high schools, to be able to continue to broaden what our students are exposed to.
okay. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Is the other school also a smaller school?
Yeah.
Right, middle school.
Okay, so the 3 schools that don't have necessarily CTE are 2 of our magnets and 1 charter,
Mhm.
all 3 of which have smaller enrollment. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I think that's why on that slide, you'll see, and Pam knows this, we've got to really have these kind of cross-functional collaboration, figure out what makes the most sense as we continue, because it might not just be adding a business class. Right. So I think we have to figure that out. But yeah, it is all 3 small schools.
Okay, and in some ways, I guess what I'm wondering is, although it may not be formally CTE in those schools, because those 3 schools do have more of a project-based or like a focus to in the purpose of the school, is it fair to say that there is some kind of like hands-on real world learning? It's just not in the broader spectrum of CTE?
Yeah, and I wanna be careful to say that there is an interest in that because there
Okay.
absolutely is interest, knowing that. You know, the majority of jobs right now are going to require some kind of post-secondary training, but not necessarily a 4-year degree. And how do we expose our students to those career paths? Yes, we have a focus at our school, and yes, we try to prioritize experiential learning, but that is an area that we would like to see further development in our building.
Okay,
I think it's an area we have to problem solve. Especially for Wright and Spring Harbor. Again, I think Badger Rock has a really strong programming of which is different than all of our other schools, but I think it's an area of problem solving. And I think what Pam said, and just to kind of provide this context, the idea of formalized CTE programming for us is important because it's leading kids to that next level in high school into these spaces that we just invested from our referendum, which is leading to credentials upon graduation, so kind of that sequencing. So I think that's part of what we wanna figure out with the smaller schools of how can you continue with the experiential learning and how can you also think about formalized CTE program.
Okay. That's super helpful. Thank you so much
Mhm.
for that. Could I turn the corner to the two math
Ah,
questions?
go right ahead. You got the expert right here and the team.
Okay, so, when you all talked about the kind of the audit you did for CTE, this is gonna lead me to the math question. Kind of started with, we had a noticing that CTE offerings were heavily concentrated in 4 schools. And they happened to be 4 West Side schools. And then you kind of took that as a challenge and you started to expand. So now I'm gonna turn the corner to algebra. Has there been any noticings that are similar around the participation rates or the completion rates in algebra also looking very different by feeder pattern, or are you just looking at kind of trend data overall?
You wanna answer that? Okay, I'll start. I think that there is differences, and not necessarily by feeder. I think across our
Okay.
feeder schools, I think that we have moved to many schools doing more opportunities for students to access algebra, or we've had algebra. So across all 4 feeders, I think you see that. And I think as Toki spoke, what we're seeing is the algebra for all. Some people are questioning, is that still the right direction, which is why this math task force is so important? Or are we seeing that students don't have all of the requisite skills to not only go into algebra, be successful into algebra, and then go to high school and the geometry? So I think we're at a place right now where we're doing a deep dive around our, as Kay had indicated, our 4 K-12 math course offerings and our 4 K-12 math programming to determine what might be the future of mathematics at MMSD. And I think it isn't by feeder, I think it is by school, I think it is by student, I think it's across the entire district that we're just seeing different levels of math skill, right?
Okay,
Do you want to add anything to that before?
No, I think you hit on it. There is algebra across our whole district. It's not just on the west side. There are schools across the whole district that offer and have students engaging in algebra.
yes. Thank you, Kay. I did hear that. And I think where my instinct goes is, are there very disparate experiences for students, either by race and ethnicity, gender? And I was wondering if it was also maybe by location of the way that the city is socioeconomically kind of maybe situated. So I was thinking more like, love seeing the trend go up around participation, but are we being diligent about looking at actual participation of students by various ways that they are situated and show up to school?
Yeah, I think we are, and I think we still are seeing some persisting gaps. I mean, we're seeing it in our formal data. I think we will see some similar gaps in not just access to algebra, but the completion of algebra in middle school.
Okay.
And I think we are trying to figure out if this, Mark and Sheba talked about, our schools have all implemented a win time, and is that like win time enough to accelerate learning and really build skills that students need to kind of complement what's happening during their core? Or do we need to continue to look at our overall math instruction across the district and make some changes, similar to what we did in literacy, right? We spent a lot of time so our literacy instruction focusing on the science of reading and kind of resetting. And I think we're in a similar space with math, because our math data overall in terms of outcome data has has not moved, or in some ways we've gone backwards a little. And so, again, I don't want to overemphasize, but I think this task force and the work that Kay's really done at middle school, our elementary teams just started to really focus on the use of core materials again.
Yep.
Getting back into what kids need for grade level. Then I think we have to keep that momentum and also see if there's other decisions we need to make around our overall math instruction.
And I think one thing that has to be surfaced, the biggest gap is our standards. Students accessing and being successful in our standards.
Okay.
So we can talk about algebra, but where the gap is the deep rigor learning that students are missing due to the COVID, due to that online learning. What we're seeing is standards gaps.
Okay.
So we will, as we reset back to what solid core foundation standards-based learning is, we will see our numbers start to increase because students will have access to that deep, rigorous grade level standards-based learning. But as long as there's gaps in the standard, that's consistent across the whole MMS, right? So just because we are in algebra doesn't mean we're being successful in algebra, right? And what is across the whole district, regardless of race or anything, is gaps in standard.
Okay.
And I don't want to underestimate the power of the work they're doing around math identity.
Yeah.
And because that starts with our youngest babies and already who believes they are or not a mathematician and a scholar. And so that work is really good. And then just a reminder to the Board of Education, because of what we've learned around this kind of gaps in, we do have MAP working with one of our middle schools this year, doing a pilot around high dosage tutoring in the areas of ratio and proportion, which is one of the areas of greatest need for algebra success. And so that is coming underway in the end of its first year. So we're going to be learning a lot from that.
Okay.
They're at Sherman.
Okay. My last question, and I think you just spoke to it a little bit, Cindy, but I just wanted to make sure I'm tracking where we are as a district. So you you referenced like algebra for all. And I think as I was listening to you all, I was thinking, as we've moved algebra into all of the middle schools, it sounds like there's a philosophy that we have embraced as a district, that algebra before high school is something that should be in the core curriculum and not just considered like an advanced learning opportunity, that all students should have access to it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
It's
yeah, go ahead.
It is correct that it definitely is not just living in advanced learning anymore. Definitely trying to have, some schools have moved where every student in 8th grade takes algebra, and then towards ensuring that it's a like opportunity for students, so it doesn't in advanced learning anymore. I would say it's more our core curriculum.
Yeah, how long do you think it's been in the core? Because I know that's a shift.
Well, it started the
previous
year we
years.
went into COVID.
Okay.
Cherokee Middle School was our first school.
Okay.
To go to this concept of algebra for all the year that COVID hit.
Okay.
And so then a couple of other schools post-COVID, and I'm looking at Sheba and Mark and Angie, because a couple other schools post-COVID had begun to think about that concept, but it was really the year of COVID where we as a district had a school start moving that direction.
Okay. And so, just to clarify, so in the schools where they haven't quite gotten to a place where every 8th grader will take algebra, there's still some choice, I'm assuming. What does the 7th grade, what is the 7th grade bridge to algebra? Is there like their math teacher is recommending algebra based on a certain set of prerequisite skills and conceptual understanding? Or can the student and family say, this is what I want to take in 8th grade, regardless of their 7th grade math experience?
Togi,
Yeah, last year after realizing kind of what the trend of our data was, we wanted to make sure that every student had that opportunity to show what standards that they've mastered, to make sure that their placement in their 8th grade class was meeting what their needs were. So last year, we allowed every student in our 7th grade math class that was focusing on 7th grade standards to use their data in that middle school math assessment that was standards based. And Kate can talk a little bit more about where those questions come from that focus directly on the standards that are needed, not retaught in algebra, because they don't need to have mastered standards that are also retaught in algebra. Based on the data from that assessment, based on the screener data, we then were able to have multiple points of data for which students have a solid foundation in the standards and skills to allow them to be successful in algebra in 8th grade. And those students, what are those areas that they still need support? So we can make sure to use that 8th grade math class to set them up for success, no matter what their math path is, then moving into high school. And that's something that we're continuing this year of using multiple points of data in their at the end of 7th grade to make that placement for 8th grade. Families are notified and involved with it. Students' voice is involved with it as well. So it's really a collaboration of us as a school with students and families as that transition from 7th into what are the options in 8th grade, and then no matter what class you're in, what does that path can look like in high school as beyond it.
Okay.
Dr. Copeland, you have a little different approach at Senate. I don't know if you want to answer that differently.
Well, my approach is we are really trying to move towards grade level math. I'm working with K right now to see, because my teachers, when the students actually come in when they're 7 AB, and they're coming in like our 6th graders when they come in this year, they're coming in directly to 6th grade math. We have one algebra teacher, and we have the teachers right now are looking at it and seeing how many students actually qualify to be in algebra. How many actually qualify to be in algebra? Because like Casey said, the gaps are there. You have students come in and they're missing key math concepts. And when they get to high school, those things, they show up. So we're looking at redirecting our math. I like the process in which Toki did. So we're definitely looking at changing around, removing compacted math out of Senate.
I think this, what you're hearing in these responses is also why this math task force, in terms of trying to put forth recommendations around we as a system, what we need to be making changes to or adjusting are we've seen some of our surrounding school districts, something similar to, we just have to reset. What is universal? What do we do for all schools, all students? It's really important. And so this task force, in terms of not only what they're digging into, but what they're gonna put for recommendations for leadership for this group, or things that we are gonna wanna really pay attention to and determine where we put the system.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll just close out by this. So, when we see the forward exam and we see a single digit proficiency, particularly in math, and especially with certain groups of students, is that connecting back to the math standards that you're talking about, Kay?
Wisconsin standard, forward is directly linked to our standard.
Okay,
And due to standards gaps, we struggle with our forward.
okay,
And I really have hope, and I see a bright future for us with this reset, because the more our focus standards are living in the classroom, the more forward doesn't look like a stranger to our students.
Mm,
Because the reality is, as long as we continue to have gaps in our standards, our forward data cannot budge because it's a stranger. It's that like aunt that lives on the other side of the country that like finally got money and bought her plane ticket and showed up and was like, hi, I'm your aunt such and such, but they don't know them, right? And
Yeah.
that's what forward, that's how disconnected they are from forward. So
Okay.
as long as standards gaps live in our classroom, we're gonna see the gaps in our forward, because forward is based on Common Core standards.
Okay.
And Wisconsin has their DPI state standards, Wisconsin standards, but they are mirrored to Common Core. We just named it something different, but it's not. They are parallel the exact same.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for all the work that you're doing as well, and thank you again to everyone else.
All right, we've heard from 5 board members so far. There's 2 board members we haven't heard from, so I'm gonna add myself and board member Mosmer to the stack. Of the 5 board members, we've heard from 3 board members have additional questions. So we'll hear from that after we've heard from the 2 board members. Move into ask any questions. Board member Mosmer Feltham.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks all for all of your hard work and for explaining all of your work so well. I love the analogy of the aunt that comes to visit. I have one question though. When you say that there's standards gaps in the classroom, you mean that there are classrooms that are skipping around standards and not going in a prescribed order that will build skills, or you mean that students have gaps in their comprehension of standards?
Have gaps in their mastery of our state standards.
I see. Okay. Cool. So my first question is about the math task force recommendations 1, 2, and 3. Am I supposed to understand that those recommendations mirror the 4 recommendations from catalyzing change? So I see there's like 4 recommendations from catalyzing change, and the next slide has math task force February recommendation 1. Does that mean you're discussing recommendation 1 and broaden the purpose of learning mathematics?
Absolutely.
Okay, got it. You'll come out of this work with recommendations for how MMSD should proceed in each of those 4 catalyzing change areas.
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding correctly. My next question is just another detail question, is about learning walks. Can someone give me like a quick breakdown? What are we talking about?
I can do that. So learning walks are happening at each of our middle schools. We had 1 walk in the first semester in each of our 12 middle schools and 1 in our second in each of our middle schools. So primarily, like I said, we are going in and focusing on, we have a tool, a K-12 walkthrough tool that we go in and we're looking into numeracy classrooms, we're looking in literacy classrooms to just kind of see where they are at point with some of our core materials, where we are with learning targets and outcomes for students. But we have, by the end of this year, we will be in each of the 12 middle schools 2 separate times.
You're looking for, we would expect you to be on this module at this time, are you? Or are you looking for something else?
Not necessarily in the area of numeracy, but with our EL curriculum, we would be looking at the unit of study of where they are currently. So in literacy, I would say yes, but not necessarily in numeracy.
Okay.
You can add to this, but I would say the focus is around our core instructional practices. So we have practices that are universal across content areas that are adult moves in service of students. So how are adults setting up the classroom for student-to-student discourse? How are we thinking about the active classroom? How are we thinking about our use of anchor charts? Those are just some examples around the core instructional practices.
We also look to see how district core resources are being used in classrooms.
Right.
Which is be how standards are being distributed across our district.
Okay, now that you're talking about it, I remember maybe asking a really similar question a few months ago. Cindy, I asked at that time, like, where did these core instructional practices come from? Was there like a really straightforward answer to that, or was it a complicated answer?
No, it comes from best practices in research and then our EL education.
Right, okay, I'm remembering it all now. Thank you. Got it. Okay, that's great. I got learning walks. My next curiosity is about scheduling, because I heard multiple people talking about changes to scheduling or being creative with scheduling. So I suppose my first question, Spring Harbor, you said, oh, our schedule is unique across MMSD middle schools. Is that, can you talk a little bit about how that came to pass? Is that unique because of your unique like relationship, or you got really creative and asked the right people? Like, how did that come to pass that you were able to build this creative schedule that's working for students that mirrors some of the things that were working for students during virtual learning?
Sure. So I will say I've been here 11 years, and probably the first 5 or 6 years, we probably had a new schedule every other year. And that was driven by allocation and shared teachers and just trying to make it all work. And when we went into lockdown with COVID, we had to have a different kind of schedule to be able to support our students in their learning. And what we learned through that is our students really appreciated that extra time with their teachers. It was really impactful in their learning. And we made the mistake of coming out of COVID and going back to a traditional 8-period day. And our kids are like, this isn't working. Our families are like, this isn't working. So we said, what can we do within the scope of our day to be able to mirror more of that schedule we had during COVID that allowed students some agency over their learning, allowed students opportunities for that social and that competency building, that fun. And the schedule that we are going into year 4 with is the schedule we came up with. And so that was a bit co-designed with students. And we do get feedback from our students and our families, and they tell us, please don't touch it. Our staff appreciate it because they do feel that they can best support students using this schedule model.
Okay, thank you. I would be curious, what other, like, can that scale, right? Is that something that can be seen in other middle schools, and what are the barriers there? And I know obviously you wouldn't have the answers to that necessarily on your own, but that's really interesting to me. Another question I have about schedules is when we talk about increased collaboration time and like increased common planning, like what's making that happen? How is that? What's moving around to make room for that? I think that's really important. And I'm curious about what's been moved, what's been moved out of the way, what's happened like adaptively that's enabled that to happen.
Sure. And so some of the things that we had to consider were things such as internal sub coverage and that sort of thing. And how is it that we can take our master schedule, what we know about our students, or our staff and their common planning time, and ensuring that we're protecting that time. And so say, for example, if there is a grade level that plans on Tuesdays and this is that protected EL time or EL or literacy time, we make sure that they're not called on for anything. They are not able to have special education meetings at that time or sub at that time, or those structured times are exactly what it sounds like, which is just protected to make sure that time is, because we know it's critical that they have that common time.
Board member, one thing a theme that I've heard that should be no surprise is that the preferred professional development model is where the needs of the adults and the teams is what generates the schedule versus the schedule limits or directs how that time is spent. So any common planning time where it is everyone's on the same schedule allows you to differentiate for, the need of the time of the year or the school or the challenge that's been identified from student data. And it's just like personalized learning. It's just for adults in that case.
So I'm curious, what we need to do as a system to enable that to happen for more teams more regularly, without impacting other teams, right? So I heard you say, when ELA plans, they aren't in IEP meetings. Great. But also people need to go to IEP meetings, right? Those also need to happen. And so I'm curious, like I'm not looking for an answer from anybody. I'm just thinking about like where we're going. Like what kind of structural or systematic changes can we make around staffing, around the calendar that would enable this really important learning to happen for adults so that really important learning can happen for kids. And it's no secret that I love scheduling and I'm interested in being creative about scheduling so that we can just provide students with the best possible experiences. Okay. My next comment is sort of like in line with what board member Castro said about like a holistic sense of it. I didn't hear a lot today about the community piece of college career and community ready. And I urge us not to forget it. I spend a lot of time thinking about like what helps communities survive difficult external stuff without turning on each other, and it's that community stuff. And I know it's all in there. I know that we're all doing it every day with students. I'm certainly not trying to intimate that it's not happening, but I feel strongly that we cannot lose track of that. And then my last question is about the next steps for the task force and what do you see as like necessary for those next steps to really take root? Like when you think about, okay, we're going to plan for 25, 26 and beyond, and you think like, okay, we got to have these 3 things go right for it to all take root. Like, what do you see as necessary conditions for your work to take root in all of the schools?
So in our next meeting is really for the group. One of the things we've really emphasized is this is not central office learning. This is a team's learning. So our team is working on what next steps will look like. It's kind of hard for me to answer that now before the team has met to really define what is important for us to present to the senior leadership team. Because it isn't just central office making the decision, it is the whole community of the math task force.
Cool. Okay, that makes perfect sense to me. Good luck with that next meeting. I'll look forward to hearing about it. That's all for me, sir.
Thank you so much, Board Member Wilster-Falcom. I want to address my first question at Dr. Gothard. So I want to thank everybody so much for this presentation. I think we've gotten to highlight some really great things. And I also got to witness Moana at Senate and cried the whole time. So beautiful. Thanks for mentioning it, Dr. Copeland. In terms of kind of setting the trajectory of our long-term future as it relates to our middle schools, if you go to our website, our district website, and you click on our middle schools, it takes you to their report card, to their state report card. And so in part, what I'm thinking about right now is how does the conversation align to the public with what our report cards look like? And so I don't need to tell you where we're at. I have it written down in front of me. I'm sure you look at this on a regular basis, but how do you want to get from where we are right now at the middle school level to where you think we should be over the course of the long term?
A few things come to mind. First is that so many in this room heard me say this, and I think last week we talked about this. The middle school in Madison has been studied for a long time. I can think back to, I'm trying to date myself, 20 years ago, I was on a task force called the Middle School Model, where our task would come together to develop what the curriculum and program of studies were going to be for Madison's middle schools at the time. And that was to set us up to be consistent, for us to be predictable, and for us to start to garner the kind of resources that it would take for us to deliver this day after day, year after year, and get ourselves to a place where we could, in fact, increase long-term outcomes for our middle school students. I think something also happened during that time though as well, where we're looking at these large comprehensive high schools, and there was a desire to have our middle schools also like that, where it was hard to just focus on what you might consider a school model of the 70s and 80s. You want to start looking at personalized learning at the middle school level. So it brought a lot of tension to the point where I think a lot of middle schools have tried to kind of be not, I don't want to say junior high level, but these mini high schools where you're exposing students to as many things as possible. And you run the risk in that of spreading it too wide, where you lose a little bit of focus. Not to say that it isn't with the best intentions possible, that you want to expose children, developing children, young people to as many different things as possible. So I think for us, it's going to be important for MMSD right now in 2025 to identify what are our most urgent long-term student outcomes and what is our plan going to be to specifically address them. And that doesn't mean that it should wipe out all that exploration, because we're still in that place. We still want, we talked about Zello as part of this presentation, where we want students to identify who they see themselves as students, who they see themselves as members of the community, try to make that connection to learning. So, Board Member Muldrow, I think that our strategic plan, gives us kind of a relaunch look at this in terms of what is a middle school student MMSD and how can we address what you and I have both seen, you know, in that report card. And also, you know, talk about demystify middle school a little bit too. In every community I've led, you know, middle schools have that section you talk about, but you really don't. For lots of reasons, some of it true and some of it is far off. And I think it's a chance for us to really lead from the heart and the head with what we want middle school students in Madison to experience. So I would expect, and I think the work of the math task force is an example of what can be done. You know, when you focus and you set some goals and you set some deliverables, you know, on the sake of student learning.
I greatly appreciate that. And what I appreciate about it is having that long-term perspective of 20 years ago, we were talking about this. And I want to say, one of the hard things about being a board member over the course of the last 6 years is that we make these real investments, right? Like we say, hey, instead of having our students go to school on public transportation, which is a far lesser expense to the district, we are going to invest in significantly in making sure that our young people are getting up at a time that works best for them developmentally. And then what we don't see as board members is here's the before and after picture. Here is what it looked like when our students were getting up at 7:30 in the morning to go to 7th grade. And here's what it looks like now that they're going to school at 9. And here's the improvement. And here is why millions and millions of taxpayer dollars were well spent to make that adjustment. 20 years ago, we sat down and we said we wanted to do this. And that is why today our report cards look like this, right? Like that disconnect is something I really want to see us resolve. And I think the investment at the middle school level is tremendously important. So I am incredibly grateful to have this conversation tonight. For the principals, we have Senate, Spring Harbor, and Toki here this evening. I want to say I deeply appreciate your leadership and you all spending a little bit of time with us tonight. My question for each of you is you all have very, very different schools. And so if you were going to ask our board to invest in middle school mathematics in a way that is specific to your school, what would you ask us to do? And I'm going to start with Dr. Copeland at Senate.
Oh, where you go?
I'm right here. I'm right here.
Dr.
I'm
I
gonna say,
want to give you points tonight for making an entrance. You have told us how to do it.
listen, first of all, when we talk about math, you know, I have to yield to Kate, but I want to say what I've asked. And I came up last year, when I sat down and I had a meeting with my teachers, I immediately wanted to get rid of compacted math because I wanted our students to be able to fill those gaps. And what ended up happening is we had a full meeting. I had all my teachers and people to come in. And when I got finished, I forgot that the community had a different thought, my elementary schools. So I was getting phone calls from parents all over in different feeders. I'm like, are you getting rid of compacted? So I said, okay, I better backpedal a little bit and see a little bit more. So now I'm very excited about this task force that Kay is heading. This is going to help us see into the future and make sure that we make the right decisions. Because all we want to do is make sure that our children get the best opportunities. We don't want them to grow up with gaps and not knowing parts of math that they should and missing out on great opportunities when they're taking the ACT. SAT. So this is great for our students. And that's what, if I had to get anything, just making sure that we provide our students with the best math program that can facilitate their learning.
I just want to make sure I understand your answer. So I think what you're saying is we're on the right track in terms of investing in the task force.
Yes, very much so.
Okay. Senate and or Spring Harbor and Toki, I want to give you the opportunity to let us know what we should be investing in terms of middle school math at your school.
I'll just echo what Dr. Copeland said, because I do think the work of the task force is critical because we are receiving our babies from our feeder elementary schools and the experiences are so vastly different from one elementary school to the next that it's really hard when they come together in one building to figure out how best to support those needs moving forward. And I do believe that a potential recommendation out of the task force is going to be looking at some potentially newer and stronger resources for our teachers that really could be impactful for that work. So that's the support I'm looking for.
I appreciate that you foreshadowed what we may hear after. And also, it's incredible that level of alignment in terms of how we are approaching this and tackling this right now. I want to make sure I've heard from everybody. Is there a middle school I left out?
I want to just echo what Pam said as far as supporting our teachers and being able to understand those standards and implement that high quality.
Okay. I greatly appreciate this. This is an area in which I've had a lot of concern in terms of our disparities related to race and gender, and the historical implications that they reinforce. And I think it's something we really need to do something about and be pretty proactive about. So to hear that there's an alignment in relationship to the approach is really exciting for me. Is anybody who's with us tonight doing direct instruction in a middle school math class?
No, we don't have. No.
Okay.
Not, at least not in this group, because it's not a teacher.
Then I think it's unfair to ask the next question. So I'm gonna say that I think it would be great to hear folks who are providing direct instruction. I'm sure that they'll be part of what the task force is doing. But really having a clear understanding, if you're a parent and you want to know, what does middle school math mean? What is my kid supposed to walk away from 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade with? I think that's something that we want to highlight in terms of how we're setting our students up for success long term. And of course, in order for middle school math to be strong, we need elementary school math to be strong. And so I'm hearing that that's part of making sure that this aligns district wide. And I really appreciate the question around feeder pattern and why we're seeing what looks like pretty different realities at different schools. If you look again at that statewide report card. The last thing I want to say is that we have this huge investment in early childhood literacy. And what I didn't hear tonight was a lot of conversation around how our young people are accessing literacy. Although I have a student who just left middle school. I have a student who is going into middle school last year. And what I can say is that my child was never sent home with a book or a play or a book of essays or a book of poetry. And so to go to high school and to be expected to write in a way that she hasn't been strategically exposed to at the middle school level seems like we're setting kids up to either be successful because they have access beyond school or to really have to work from a space of lack of experience and exposure. And so whatever we can do to make sure that our middle school students are reading books of essays, poetry, plays, have a great deal of exposure to all kinds of genre of literature throughout middle school really matters. The last thing I'll say is we didn't talk about puberty at all today. And I think that is a missed opportunity to talk about how hard it is to work in middle schools. And not just because, you know, puberty is really an intense experience, a physiological experience that cannot be denied, but also because it asks our teachers to be really agile and supportive of our students holistically as they make a really physical transition better and of where they're at in their learning process. And so my hope is that we can have this conversation from a greater space of what our students need developmentally and how we're accommodating those needs. So that when something happens, like, I don't know, say one kid takes another kid's cell phone and puts it down another kid's shirt, and then that kid reaches into that kid's shirt, right? Like, we are having a conversation about like appropriate touch and bodies and consent and boundaries at the middle school level so that students feel informed, right? Because that transition from being like 9 to being 12, that's big, right? And what happens under a person's shirt really matters in the time span. So I think like making sure that we're having this conversation in real consideration of where our young people are at the middle school level and strengthening the supports we have for our educators is something I really want to see us do. Thank you all so much for making time to talk to us about this tonight. I think we have Board Member Vanderwilen who wants a little more time on the floor, then Board Member Saravo, then Board Member Pearson.
Mine is really quick, and it's a Cindy question. And that is, after hearing my colleague Martha Sravo's question, is there a way we could get dual exceptionality added to our charts in the future?
Yeah, thank you for that question. We will definitely provide the other student groups and make sure we're quite exceptional in that board
I
member.
appreciate that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, when I was, there was something I wanted to do as like a follow-up after, we talked about the feedback from students. And so it was after graduation. So is that we're not getting that until after, before they exit, like after high school, it's all done. So you don't get any feedback until they're graduated from middle school.
No, we do get feedback from students. Usually it's at different various level. Teachers do get feedback during the semester. And then we also get feedback from, like every year we'll get feedback from the students around mostly our programming, how we're doing, what they're learning, how responsive it is to their needs, what else do they want to learn. And then CTE has data that are required by the state that we also collect.
So I was kind of taking that in pairings with like some of the math that was going on, because I think math access is also different in different schools, whether it's like there's virtual access to it versus in person and stuff like that can be a different experience for different students. And how are we capturing that or adjusting along the way, I think is really important to react to as they go on. The other thing I didn't bring up is that I think I'm glad, Ali, you're kind of talking about the different things that students are experiencing in middle school, because I felt that we kind of flew through the arts slide. I didn't really feel we got to connect with that one hardly at all. And I think that exploration of the creativeness that can go on, like I had to go back and I was just kind of reading through that again, because it felt that we just went straight through it. And when kids are coming from elementary school where there's a lot of creative and play and all that's there, like how do we continue to make sure that students are connected to the classroom, to excel in math and reading, and maybe some of the other stuff that in the arts is why they're connecting to their academics and just staying engaged in their classroom. I think it's just really essential to constantly be reminded of that. And Board Member Pearson had said something specific about the Math Expo. I was wondering how many students, how many schools were part of your Math Expo? Because I was wondering about the pool as well, but I don't think it was like how many schools were actually part of that.
It was during our PD time.
Right.
So it's the entire district.
Yeah.
Attends PD.
So you had someone from every.
It was voluntary, so I mean, as
Right.
much as I like pushed and stabbed and tapped.
Yeah.
We didn't have 100% from all schools represented, but 100% schools were represented in the audience. Just not as the presenters.
Okay, so you have like a virtual option for people to go to? I'm trying to understand how the workshop worked, like the one that you had the picture of up there. Was that something, is that specific what you're talking about? Like if that was the option?
Night.
Yeah.
So, on our PD day, it was a professional development for teachers by teachers. So it was physically in person since it was a no student day. And so all of our schools were represented in terms of engaging in the workshops. Not every school was a presenter delivering the professional development for the school. That makes sense.
I think so, because the one thing I think I've heard from staff is sometimes when things are in person, it can become very difficult as someone who's on the opposite end of town, or they're trying to get more stuff done during that day. Was there virtual access to that?
This is
I'm trying to understand how this.
Yeah,
works.
this is a designated time.
Yeah.
Where during PD, it's called math roll-alike.
Yeah.
They do roll-alike, they do PD in the morning at their school. And then they're given travel time to access the afternoon PD. So, I believe girls' morning ends at 11:30 and ours starts at 12:30.
So technically every school had access.
Yes.
to it?
Yes.
And then you also know how many schools, I don't know. I think I'm circling back on my question.
Yeah, it's not optional. It's not like, it's where their professional development is
Okay,
once a month
okay,
with me, with whatever content they attend. It's just like going to work that day.
okay.
So like wherever you would report to your work, school, your home base in the morning, and then you go to one of the district locations in the afternoon.
Okay,
So like all math teachers attended with me, all social studies, science, ELA attended with their respective leader to get their PD.
thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. And that's it.
All right, and then lastly, we'll hear Board Vice President Maya Peterson.
Thank you. Sorry, I was a little distracted. It's Westward thing tonight. My kids are going to West next year, so.
Like your schedule.
Yeah, the schedule. So now that I'm trying to like coordinate that right now happening. Anyways, my question is quick. Thank you, Ali and Blair, for the first, that question that I did have got answered in terms of like the next steps of the task force. Cause I think like what we have seen with task force or recommendations that might come to the board, we don't necessarily always know exactly what is needed from us. To also further invest and kind of make things happen for you all. So thank you for asking that question. Question I do want to ask is around some of the fast growing occupations. So I was just like Googling it again, and they are changing. It sounds like we got a lot of those already in our CTE programs for like exploration opportunities for our students. But the thing that I'm missing is the AI. And how we are somewhat integrating that. I was at a conference this past week and with other school board members from across the US, and that was one of the things that we were kind of delving in and talking about is that we are severely behind other countries when it relates to our tech and our opportunities for AI right now. And when I say severely, I mean, we are like at the bottom for a lot of our schools. So, I guess what are we doing to kind of get us up to speed? We have a university, a research university, right down the street. How are we kind of like partnering with folks to kind of build out what that might look like with opportunities for AI for our students, because that is going to be one of the largest driving professions in that realm. That in Web3, and I think I mentioned Web3 a while ago. Metaverse.
You want to talk about kind of our IT, and I can talk about from the system perspective. We have a guiding coalition related to AI. But if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So that's really true. What we have found in CTE is that we have a lot of gaps that we need to fill, and starting at the middle school, even like the elementary school. Right now, a group of us are just looking at what can we do to create this K-12 alignment so that it's building on elementary programming in middle school and high school. So right now we're looking into the REACH program. There's just initial discussion around how do we work with our elementary staff so that our students have the foundation, the exposure to not only IT, but engineering. And then how do we continue to build the skills during middle school to get more of the exploration? And then how do we make sure also we get them ready to do more advanced level CTE courses and engineering and all those skills? So that they are ready to have these industry credentialed dual credits or certifications. Because right now, it's not just in at AI, we're seeing students who are in a high school class is coding for the very first time. So this is just the initial phase of it. We started meeting and we're just starting to think about how we're gonna approach this work and when I'm hoping that when it's ready, we'll bring it to leadership for a decision. But yeah, AI, we're also at the middle school level, working on our curriculum for greater alignment, and AI is something that we plan to integrate into digital citizenship into the information technology pathway.
No, thank you for that.
No, I was just gonna say a couple things. A reminder that we talked about kind of the dirty labs and the clean labs that we're building in our middle schools in the new builds, and specifically because we know it's ever evolving. Right now, it might be coding, right now, it might be engineering, right now, it might be all these things, and 10 years from now, who knows what that is? So the flexibility of those lab spaces, but ensuring there's a clean one and a dirty one. Meaning one for like the materials and one to do more of the programming side. The second is we just added for this next school year, our early college academies that focus on coding and IT, and then within all comprehensive high schools, we'll have the other side of the tech for students to access. And then as a district, because AI is ever evolving, we have a guiding coalition that's led by our instructional tech team and Nicole Schaefer, who supports our summer programming, to create guiding principles, to think about policy and practice, to think about the best tools, both for teachers, but also so students can figure out how to really focus on the critical thinking, because you can pretty much put anything into any AI generated tool now and it'll spit it back out. But how are we helping students think about it, and how are we helping teachers how to teach that? So all of that is work that started this year because the world of AI has just taken off and is going to continue to take off. So we're trying to get in front of it, and we've been working with the CISA too, which has done a lot of work to help guide us. So we've got some stuff going on. We just released a set of resources and guidance for adults as well to help support students.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you because I have forgot about that. We had an extensive conversation about this last week with school board members across where and you know, one thing was that the AI connected to all these other can be connected to all these other occupations, but then also in how it's showing up in the medical field, how it's showing up in the engineering, how it's showing up just in regular like construction and things like that. And the connection, and I think it's kind of cool too if we were able to build something out even as early as elementary, because you know, even though we have like, you know, the AI generated things that we can do, it takes a level of critical thinking skills to be able to ask the AI to do certain things. And so I think even around that is like, how are we also incorporating critical thinking with some of these things, and that we're not just so focused on, I think back to, I think Sabian's point, and I think Martha also mentioned a little bit of just like how are we kind of like wrapping around the critical thinking skills around just development and whatnot. And we're not just saying, okay, go get an occupation, but really like we can pivot. We're setting you up for all the skills for you to pivot into wherever you need to go. And so, yeah, I'm excited to.
The critical thinking is key. You said it, I mean, right? Yeah. You put anything into it, but how do you navigate and make sense of what it is, and how do you then ask deeper questions?
Yeah.
And the infrastructure in elementary through our reach time is exactly what we're doing. So we have maker spaces happening in a lot of this coding that will be the future for starting in early grades.
Thank you. That was my question. I'm excited to learn more later.
Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll move on to our next topic.
Okay, we gotta do a little bit of transition. Thank you, everyone from our middle schools. Thank you so much.
Actually, my son is six.
Really?
Yeah, I hired him, I pay him $100 for branding, but signed the t-shirts. And then, one of the teachers in the district made
Thank
them.
you so much.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Copeland.
All right, man, I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great evening.
Thank
Hope you're.
Yep.
You're working on questions.
Yeah, of course.
You said you went to.
Hey, Jesse, can you?
Yes.
Thank you for, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having such a robust conversation about everything that's going on at our middle school level. I think when one item takes 2 hours, it means we need to talk about it more frequently. And since this is the first time we've talked about middle schools in the 6 years that I've been on this board, I think like any increase is an increase, and this is a nice starting. We're gonna dive into early learning. So I will hand it back over to our superintendent, Dr. Gothard.
Well, I would say save the best for last, but I do think, I can share with everyone, board member Muldrow and members of the board, that I'm really impressed with the steps that MMSD has taken for 4K. I've shared with many of you when I left in 2013, we had just scratched the surface. Really more community-based, didn't really take on the perspective of let's pull this in and let's really do it in a great way. And to come back and see more than 1,400 of our scholars enrolled and thriving and doing just great work. I can't say enough about the work of everyone who's been responsible for that. And for Colleen and her team who continue to look for ways to increase access and make sure that the high quality of the program is not sacrificed one bit. In fact, always looking for ways to better direct our youngest learners for a successful future. So I'm excited for tonight's presentation. And Cindy, unless you have anything to add, we'll just turn it right over to Colleen.
No, let's just go right into Colleen and Jess, could you pull up the slides? And I think everyone knows Colleen Mattoon, who is so I will turn it over to her.
All right. I'm Colleen Mattoon, Director of Early Learning. Thank you for hearing about early learning tonight.
I think when I think of what is the best thing about early learning, I really want to say it is the teachers and the educational assistants and the directors and principals who actually, you know, really individualize the programming, because early learning, when children come to us, they come to us at so many different levels. And it really takes our sites and our school sites in order to really specialize for those students as they're walking in their doors for the first time. And there's a lot of things that come into play. We're really looking at whole child development. We want to keep that focus to make sure that we're ensuring that all areas of development are growing equally as we are moving throughout the 4K year. Next slide. So today I'm just wanted to give, I present for the board one time per year, and there's always lots of questions. So today I really just wanted to provide an update of the current state of early learning in our department. Early learning consists not only of 4K, but it also consists of everything from prenatal through age 5. So just to give you a little update on what we're doing in our department in order to help support all of those different levels. And then also just to provide a future update on full day 4K, the expansion, and just some consistent growth over time, and the way that our department really looks at continuous improvement. We are continually trying to grow and learn, and our teachers and educational assistants come together through professional development to reflect on what our data is in all different areas, whether it is academic data, social emotional data, or quality environment data. So we're really trying to make sure that we have that best program possible. Next slide. So these are kind of the buckets of work that my department does. We have 4K, which is probably the biggest. We have school sites who offer 4K, 26 of them across the community, 27 community partner sites who also offer 4K across the community. And so we really make sure that the compliance is there. We're following what the Department of Public Instruction is asking out of a 4K program, ensuring that we have the family outreach and that we have those connections with families, and that we're producing engagement opportunities for families in their homes as well as in the 4K classroom. Early entrance, my department is in charge of early entrance, and there's a board policy on early entrance that's directly related. Our early entrance policy is not an advanced learning policy. It is a date of birth policy that when a child's birthday is between September 1st and October 15th, and they're interested in going into kindergarten early, not 4K, or they're interested in going into first grade and not attending kindergarten, that early entrance policy then is followed. So it's my department that establishes that paperwork every year and puts it out on our website, and then goes through that approval process as well. Just about anything that has prenatal through age 5 comes across my desk in the community. So any kind of community organizations or any community initiatives, anything that has to do with Success by 6, United Way, the City of Madison accreditation, or anything along those lines, that all comes in collaboration with community organizations that we're also take part in. And then there's Play and Learn programming, which is a very Madison unique program that everybody all over the state looks to Madison to see and learn about that program, and they try to replicate our program. And we've had just great success with our Play and Learn programming across the city. So next slide.
So I just wanted to give you a little background on our Play and Learn program. Our Play and Learn programming is a parent education session. It's where a high quality early learning classroom will be created in the community so that parents can interact with their children. It also gives them an opportunity for children to be able to interact with one another, for parents to be able to interact with one another. And we have just phenomenal Play and Learn leaders that are culturally diverse and uplift language, the difference of language within our programs, and they really build those connections with children and families. It's also a location where we can provide peer inclusion for our special education 3-year-olds, as we don't have a general education 3K program. This is a community program where families are able to come and interact with other children, and our special education staff come and they actually work with families at those programs as well. We offer it at 8 different sites across the community, and the majority of them are in community centers. And then we are reaching approximately 175 families and 186 children. So next slide. Our 4K programming, as we continue our conversations about budget, you talked I think it was last week at the budget meeting, talking about the expansion of full day 4K and their sites. We are expanding full day 4K at Stevens next year. We are moving full day 4K from Kennedy to Albion to alleviate some space constraints that are going on at Kennedy. We are also adding an additional full day 4K program at Lincoln as well. And so this just shares with you how many specific sections that we have in school sites in full day and half day. And then also full day and half day sections in our early care and education sites, which is what the acronym ECE stands for, is early care and education sites. They offer our 4K programming, and then they also provide wraparound or childcare for families as well. So we started the year with approximately 1,408 students. We are up to about 1,450. So our enrollment typically grows throughout the year, initially starting out at a lower number, and typically by the end of the year, we are adding students throughout the year. Okay, next slide. So you saw this map once before in our last presentation, but I just wanted to focus a little bit more on the actual map and where those dots are located. So the blue dots are our school sites, and the green dots are our early care and education sites. So MSCR does not offer wraparound care programming within our elementary schools for 4K programming, which creates some issues for families who need that before and after school care. So it's really important that we have options for our families to be able to access 4K programming, as well as be able to have that wraparound care as well. When we look, we can see that there are some locations in our city, and I want you to notice like the north side of town, where we have school sites on the borders of our map, and we have no early care and education site partners there to even offer that wraparound care for our families. And so those are all different things that when we're looking at where are we providing 4K programming, where are we providing full day, where are we going to provide or add additional early care and education sites, that we are taking all of that into consideration as we're adding them. Remember, we focused full day 4K as a equity priority project in order to focus on students of color, bilingual students, and families with low socioeconomic status. And so we wanted to make sure that our maps reflect that as well. And so like when we're talking about the full day 4K sites that are in our early care and education sites, those sites are our Head Start sites that we are providing full day 4K at our Head Start sites throughout the city. We're providing it at Eagles Wing, which is a highly bilingual site. We're also providing it at MATC, which again is a site that we are looking for diverse participation in. Next slide. So last year I shared this slide with you, but I know some of you were new, so I did want to make sure I brought this slide back so that you know who is all represented in our full day 4K sites. Gender-wise, our populations are almost equitable, 50-50 of male versus female within our sites. Our full and our half-day programs, the first two lines are a breakdown of our populations of race and ethnicity. And you're going to notice that we have more students of color in our full day programs than our half day programs, and that we deliberately did that by design. Our next line talks about our English learners. And our English learners, again, we have a higher population. All of our dual language 4K sites are all full day 4K program sections within our school programs. And then we are actually adding a bilingual early care and education site partner for next year as well. So that'll be exciting to have that. Our students with IEPs, it's pretty equitable in our full versus half-day sites. And we make sure to have inclusive opportunities. We have our teacher and our general education 4K assistant within the classrooms of 4K. We have also allocated because sometimes when our 4-year-olds come to us, they are not necessarily identified as having a specific individual education plan yet. So we do have some additional allocation that if it's needed in the 4K classroom, that person can be allocated to 4K to help support those 4K special education students, because we know that the full day program has a little bit different. But we are also able to move that allocation if it's not needed to support the remainder of the building and the other special education needs in the building as well. We also have our percentage of families with low income backgrounds, and you see again that we have a higher population of low socioeconomic backgrounds as well. So we have a more diverse student population in full day versus half day, which was done by design, and it was purposeful in our intent of where we added programs. Next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about 4K community approach. 4K community approach is what we call our early care and education sites that offer our DPI licensed teacher in their childcare program. We really need to talk about the importance of having all of our community come together in order to support school readiness. And when we build connections with our community partners, we're not only building connections with 4K, but we're also building connections with their infant toddler programs and with their 3-year-olds in their programs. And we're able to build that transitional approach all the way through. So it really provides us this stronger school readiness approach. It provides more equitable access, so that way families who need that wraparound care have access to it, and they also have access to a DPI licensed teacher, the 437 hours of instruction for care as well. And then we also have a community-wide investment in early learning. And so as we are supporting our community partners with community approach, it's also strengthening their support of early learning and talking about the importance of early learning. And so we want to make sure that we walk hand in hand with our partners within the community. Again, just, we really want that success in kindergarten in order for everyone to be ready. And so like building this collaboration really does a lot of great things for us in order to continue expanding that community approach. Next slide. So each year I do a survey of our families in our full day 4K classrooms. I always want to know, like, how can we do better? What are families finding out? Like, what are the best qualities of our program? What areas do we need to improve that families are telling us? And I share this information and this data with 4K teachers at the beginning of the year for welcome back, so that we're reflecting and we're problem solving together on ways that we can be more inclusive of all families within our programs. I find it like, as we went through and we kind of just did a tally of the different things, that the top three were, number one, it improved the family financial situation. It improved learning social emotional skills, and they were so excited to have peers to be able to interact with and be able to learn those social emotional skills, friendship skills and problem solving. And then they talked about the kindergarten academic readiness and being ready for kindergarten and how do we get kids there. And so the quote is just a quote from one of the families who actually provided information, and qualitatively as well, because I want to not only hear a quantitative measure, I want to qualitatively hear, what they loved and what they didn't love about our program. And so we're always continually trying to improve with that. Next slide. Another way we continually improve is we work diligently with the Madison Education Partnership. And, it's such a gift that we have this university right in our backyard. And we have, over the years, we have worked with MEP on things from attendance to mathematics and to the evaluation of our full day 4K program and how it started. And overall, whether or not children are in a half day 4K program or a full day program, MEP evaluations in the past have taught us that students are gaining literacy, numeracy, and executive functioning skills if they're in a full day or a half day program. Like, we show great improvement in students' gains from the beginning of the year to the end of the year when they come to us. All teachers are able to engage in culturally responsive practices, really meeting those individual needs of students across our programs. And that full day 4K actually provides access to 4K students for all students, and that it's starting to show a greater academic gain as we move on through the years, and we start to work and focus in more on small group instruction and being explicit and intentional in our learning with letters, and being able to make sure that we have that focus. Next slide. So when we initially started the full day 4K program, we're not necessarily seeing the academic gains in our full day program versus our half day programs. This was also like the first year we did full day 4K was the first year back from COVID. And so like there were a lot of different things going on at the time. Last year, like I said, at the end of each year, I do a needs assessment of the teachers, the parents. I gather all of the academic data and I look at data from the year before and where we're going. And what I noticed is that there was a definitely a gain in our students' academic growth from the previous year to last year's data. And so I didn't know if it was just something I was looking at. So I actually had MEP come and take last year's academic data and look at it in the same way that they looked at it with the initial evaluation in year 1 and year 2 of the evaluations. And so this data is using our teaching strategies gold. So in 4K, we use creative curriculum as our curriculum. We use teaching strategies gold as a developmental assessment, which looks at overall development. And in our initial evaluation, that MEP did, they also looked at our gold data at that time. And so they showed that I was actually right in that I was seeing some different gains. And so the initial evaluation, we did one initial evaluation in 21 and 22 where we did not see any gains or differences. In 22 and 23, we did year 2, and we saw a slight gain in literacy, but again, not statistically significant. So last year, the full day data was actually 11 points higher in our full day programs versus our half day programs. And so that was a huge difference. So, and that was for literacy. Next slide. They also looked at our math scores. And when we looked at math, again, there was no reliable difference in the 22-23 data, but in the 23-24 data, we noticed a 4-point on average gain, which is, again, another big difference in our programming. Next slide. And then our last area we looked at was our social emotional development, not as big of a gain between our half day and our full day programs, but still almost 2 points on average. So it's a modest gain in our programming for social emotional. I also provided, I provided 2 in the board packet. I provided 2 works. One was just a summary of all of the works that we've done. And one is just a current summary of this last evaluation, which talks about this data that I currently just showed you. And again, it just shows that full day 4K is a promising strategy to achieve equity as it provides significant benefits to students with lower initial achievement levels and the level of social emotional skills. So we are really seeing that where we have made this huge investment in early learning and 4K programming, that it's really making a difference and an opportunity for our students. So, and it is improving our literacy outcomes. The more purposeful and explicit we are in our instruction, the better that we become at meeting our individual needs of students. Our 4K students this year, for the first time, we took the Ames Web Screener, which is the state mandated literacy screener, 20. And so we are beginning that, adding that data as another data point that we'll continue to focus in on as well. Next slide. So I talk a lot about community because in early learning, community is everything. Like we have to be walking hand in hand with our community partners as we are beginning to build a strong foundation for our 4K programs. Roots and Wings has been with us since the beginning of full day 4K. They have helped supported the implementation of all of the classroom materials and supplies for full day 4K in our classrooms. They've provided opportunities for our teacher to be paid outside of the workday to collaborate and reflect. They have provided opportunities for our community partners with the Birth to 3 grant in order to come together. We provided an early learning community connection conference in February this year, where over 150 early educators came together, and we focused on early literacy, social emotional development, math development, and just the opportunity to meet and learn one another and be able to work with others in our community, that their students are our students and they're coming to us. So like for us to be able to provide this opportunity of a conference is huge. And so Roots and Wings helps to fund that Birth to 3 work. And so those again, our grants, you just approved them last week at the board meeting. So again, super excited to continue with this work. We also have our Play and Learn programming, which benefits from our Birth to Three funding. We do a Jump into Literacy event where we actually bring all of our Play and Learn families from across the community to come together in one location to really focus on literacy and learn, like, literacy is every part. It's such a culturally diverse event where we're really showing families and highlighting that cultural diversity is really about literacy learning through their music, through their dress, through the activities and the things that they do in each and every individual culture. Roots and Wings has sponsored all of this. We've also created an organization called Be Heart. The pyramid model is super important. It's a framework for teaching social emotional learning. It's not a curriculum. It's a framework. It's like PBIS for preschool, where we focus on relationships, teaching friendship skills, teaching problem solving, learning and teaching emotions, how to handle those emotions, and then how do we focus on collecting data for students that are providing adults, behavior that challenges adults. How are we providing data and collecting that data to make students more successful within our programs and meeting their needs? So our school district sites are not the only ones that are implementing pyramid model. Our community sites are also implementing pyramid models. So instead of each one of us doing this separately, we have created a community approach that's also backed by our statewide pyramid model initiative through the Wisconsin Infant Health Association. And they are supporting us through this community-wide initiative as well. So super excited to that our Birth to Three funds are helping to support our community partners in, trying to eliminate suspension and expulsion at the preschool level through programs, as well as teaching and being purposeful about social emotional learning in their programs. We have kits and materials that we're helping to provide so that they have those visual supports and resources. We're offering professional development and then opportunities to collaborate. We just finished a culturally responsive practices, which was a 5-month series that community agencies came together to reflect on being culturally responsive in our community and our benchmarks of quality, which drives our pyramid model implementation. So super excited that Roots and Wings helps us fund and sponsor so many different things through our work. And they have kept increasing our funding and our work along the way as we keep expanding. So next slide. So our future state, so we had an initial expansion plan that was a 3-year expansion plan. We've met that. We've actually exceeded what our initial plan was. And that is from the continued support of the board saying, no, we want to continue expanding our earliest learners and supporting full day 4K within our programs. And so we're at that point now where we need to bring people together again in order to establish, like, with our continuing enrollment of, like, I know Dr. Gothard had talked about our enrollment strategy meetings that we had, and we did an enrollment sprint. Like, what does that look like for the expansion of full day 4K and half day 4K? What does it look like if in the governor's budget, it's stated they want to do full day 4K? What does that look like if that comes down and happens? Because the state superintendent and the governor put full day 4K in their budgets. So really important that we continue as a cross-functional team with all of our departments in central office, that we're inclusive of 4K. I can't tell you, like, how happy I was, and I was so excited that it was a 4K through 12 approach up there. I was like, whoop, whoop, we're on the task force. Like, we weren't added after the fact. And like, it's so exciting. So, yeah, so that is super awesome, but we need more of that. So we need to talk about, like, there are some uniquenesses of 4K that we have to continue. We're also want to continue to expand our community collaborations in order to work with the city of Madison and everyone else across Madison community through Be Heart as well. In order to just uplift that importance of early learning. I think with the political state that we're in, and I collaborate regularly with our Head Start organizations to see how we can continue to support our Head Start organizations and let them know, like, how can we advocate and walk hand in hand with them. They they are students every day. So it's just really important that we uplift that importance of early learning within our community. Brain development happens between our prenatal and 5 years of age. Our language is developing, our social emotional skills are developing, and all of those things are happening the fastest at the early learning level. So if we can actually uplift that importance of the brain development that's happening, we can actually, it won't take as much intermediation later on in their academics. So like, let's get them on that strong foundation to start off with. And then we really want to emphasize the importance of our play and learn programming, unique to our community. Actually, I just have to tell you a story that Play and Learn is the reason I came to Madison. So I initially was the director in Racine for 8 years, and I drove to Madison and came and saw Play and Learn programming when I was a director in Racine. And I was like, this is so meaningful and important, and just loved everything. The Play and Learn leaders, the program, the family, like, the families love the programming. And so like, just to see all of the advocacy that was going on in that programming, we want to continue to emphasize that and that strong family education piece, because our children don't come with a book, right? And so this is a great opportunity for us to walk hand in hand with families and really talk about child development, where their children are, how can we build and continue to grow, and what are their next steps. And again, it's a great feeder into our 4K programs and that kindergarten readiness measure, so. My last thing, a child's first teacher is their family. And so we have to remember that they know they know their child best, and we need to partner with them at all times. So that's it. Like, questions? I'm hoping I got everything. Cindy, did I miss anything?
You did not miss anything. Two things that I just wanting to add, and then turn it over to Chair Muldrow, is one, on the slide where we talked about English learners, just a reminder to the board that we don't formally identify English learners in kindergarten. Families can identify and say the student is bilingual or speaking language in the home, but our formal identification happens in kindergarten. And then the second thing I would just mention is that there is a deep connection to what Colleen is seeing in terms of success at 4K and what we hope for the future of the entire system for K-12. Back to a conversation board Chair Muldrow had in our middle school, where we're seeing this success of literacy and how do we keep that going. And the majority of our students that enter into our 4K program join us in MMSD for kindergarten and beyond. So as we're continuing to improve in full day 4K, the idea is we're going to continue to see that matriculate up through the grade. So we're really excited. And with that, I will turn it over to Chair Muldrow.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your presentation. I see Board Vice President Pearson and then Board Member Mosmer-Thaltham. Okay.
Okay, so I just thank you for the update. I get excited when we talk about the little ones. I'll just do a couple quick questions. I guess like when we were looking at the map and we're looking at like where our sites are kind of like located, are we seeing any trends? And I know that we were intentional about really kind of shifting from the half day to the full day. But like, are we seeing any trends throughout the city as like things are happening and buildings are being built and then maybe families are kind of like moving throughout the city. Yeah.
The one trend that I noticed the most, and I think you have probably heard about this, is just our east side schools they're maxed, they're at capacity, they are full. And we continue to add more programs there. We added 2 full-day 4K programs there after the school year started last year. So one at Sandburg and one at Hawthorne. I think we continue to just have, like all of our programs on that side of town are full. Our bilingual programs are full across the city. So I think that's, another thing that we're noticing. We added a bilingual program to Stevens this next school year because we did not have a bilingual program on that side of town. It's hard because 4K doesn't enroll and have sections like kindergarten through 5th grade. And so we try very hard to make sure that it's accessible, that we're providing transportation. But when transportation becomes too long or, it is too far away, we can't offer transportation to every single site. We don't have the same amount of sites. So we tried our best to provide as much access through transportation to all of our bilingual 4K programs. But our bilingual programs continue to grow. So again, we're adding another bilingual program at Stevens next year because we do not have a 4K bilingual program on that side of town. So again, trying to provide additional access. Next year, we're adding 4 community partner sites. Here We Grow is in a location that we don't have as many community partners over on that side of town. So that was a periphery ad to make sure that we have wraparound care for families who need it. But that also any family can attend their 4K program as well. The Playing Field is another early care and education site partner that we added. Again, doing great work with our homeless population and with behaviors that challenge adults. Again, that is another site that we're adding. They do conscious discipline as well. And, it's really made a difference for their center. We also have Pequeños Traviesos, which is a completely bilingual. I'm so excited. They're a completely bilingual site from infant toddler all the way through 4K. So we're bringing them on as a community partner next year. So excited to have them aboard. And then also Red Caboose is coming back in order to collaborate with us again. And so excited to have them back because they feel like they can have the biggest struggle for our community partners is ensuring that they have a DPI licensed teacher in order to teach the 4K program. So that is a struggle.
Absolutely. And I know I'm glad that we're expanding our partnerships because as we grow, there's space is always going to be also the issue as well. And so it's good to hear that we're bringing on different type of partners to get to that need. So thank you. I guess my other question is how are we situated compared to our neighbors? And so I'm thinking of our districts. I know we probably have maybe one of the biggest robust 4K programs in the county. And then what does that look like as we are also thinking about, how are we getting people to come to the district and be a part of our district and recruitment and utilizing that as a way to also get families to come here as well and hopefully create this pipeline of increased enrollment. So.
I think we really, we want to be that destination district and our enrollment sprint really, focused on us looking at becoming that destination district and what does that look like for all of our partners. We were really explicit in our full day 4K programs. We do not open enroll students into our full day 4K programs regularly. They are our open enrollment
is only into our half-day programs. And we were deliberate in that because, you know, the additional funding for full day 4K comes at an additional cost to our district. And we wanted to make sure that it was an equity strategy and it was focusing in on our MMSD population. And so that's why we do that. So we don't open enroll from other districts. I know other districts, bordering us, I pull the Dane County Early Learning Directors together at least once, if not twice a year. And we just collaborate together on like the challenges that, you know, we have in early learning programs and like, how do we help one another? So we have a really good relationship with all of our partners. And many of them are struggling with attendance. We too, like our 4K attendance is down from COVID numbers, but we are continuing each year in order to add and grow back to our initial population where many of our community partners are kind of seeing a decline in attendance in their 4K programs. So they are seeing that, but we're seeing that across our community early care and education sites as well, a decline in enrollment, whether families are finding in-home care or other care that they're not coming to us. So we're, again, wanting to figure out through this enrollment sprint and through strategies, creating purposeful strategies so that we are, you know, getting families to come to us.
Thank you so much. And then I guess my last question is just open for anyone, and it just really is areas of growth. I know that we saw the slide of like how we're trending and some of the like great qualitative information that we're getting that's like really strengthening our program. But yeah, are there areas of growth that, you know, we are considering as well?
I mean, I will say in terms of like system growth, I mean, I think we're trying to figure out the current landscape and the future landscape. We talked a lot about, Clay mentioned this enrollment strategy, but also understanding where the growth is happening across our entire city to think about what that means for additional early childhood opportunities for families. I mean, something that's really desirable for families thinking about moving to Madison is free 4K. It's having to go private and pay for that. And so we really want that to be part of where we spend a lot of our energy. I would say also we're thinking about how we're partnering with the real estate agencies that are opening up all of the new builds, whether it's the Oscar Mayer or the Hawthorne or the Far West, and how we can be thinking about our marketing and making sure families know what's accessible to them and letting them know about the partnerships with our early child care education sites because of the wraparound support. So I think that's all part of what we're focused on for both now and in the future. And then I think her work with MAP, like she said, they've done 20 some odd studies, so the continuous improvement over time. And I think the data is showing that. So I would say both from a programmatic standpoint, as well as from like just kind of general systems.
We kind of saw small group instruction as an area that we needed to focus in on through our MEP evaluation. So that was like part of our professional development. So as we see things within our, we saw math, like math was an area that we wanted to really focus in on. So we created a professional development called Mathmatize Your Class and to really uplift, you know, those things. So as we see these different areas through the evaluations that we're doing in MEP, those we really use that data in driving our central office district improvement plans. We use that information as our data and starting points, and then we use that in order to help improve it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board Vice President Pearson. We are going to hear from Board Member Mosner-Theltham and then Board President Nichols.
Thank you. Thank you for this exciting update. I have two questions. One is, I saw the enrollment was like 1,000 students. Does that follow that, like, I don't know, that's like 75% of all kindergartners?
So our enrollment was 1,408 students at third count. And so that is approximately 70% of our kindergarten. We miss out on about 300 to 400 students in 4K to kindergarten, depending on, you know, if they're going to one of our community partners, if they're not attending a 4K program, if they're staying at home.
Right.
But 75% of our 4K students continue on with us in our kindergarten level. So some of them don't continue, so we do open enroll students from other communities to our 4K program. And sometimes those students will go back to their attendance area school for kindergarten through 8th grade. But again, the opportunity to be able to continue to stay at their early care and education site one more year is really enticing for families.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing. My second question is I wondered if you would talk a little bit about some of the ways families find out about this opportunity. And then maybe some of the dreams you have for how families might find out about this opportunity in the future.
Yeah, this is something that like even through our enrollment strategy, we talk about like, how do you advertise to families who don't watch TV, they don't read a newspaper, everything is digital and online. And so how do you advertise to that group of people who are so enclosed into their technology? I see it with my own child and her little ones. Like I had to tell her like, hey, you have to enroll in 4K, like call the district, like you need to enroll. So I mean, it's really families find out about it from word of mouth. They also find out about it from our website. I do hold a virtual parent information session in January so that families can actually log on, and I do a little presentation about 4K, and then families can ask any questions that they want. I stay on until all of their questions are answered, and we do that in English and Spanish. So again, that's a virtual option for families in the evening to learn more. We advertise, we have flyers, we go to different events. You'll see us at Juneteenth Day, you'll see us at the farmer's market, you'll see our programs, either play and learn or 4K. You'll see us throughout the city with a table set up and passing out flyers and information, because it really is, people want grassroots and they want answers and they want to build connections. So we really advertise through that way as well. But we've really talked about like future state, like thinking about like, how are we, being proactive to inviting people who are having babies in Madison to come to Madison to live and be part of our school district. Like, how are we just not waiting for them to come to us? And how are we really like getting engaged and getting out there and recruiting families to come to us? Because it's not like the public school systems of 20 years ago where wherever you lived, that's where you were. People are looking. They are looking for information earlier. They are looking at websites. They're asking families. They are doing all of those things, and it's important that we as a district have these enrollment strategies that really encompass all things, not just 4K. So.
Well, thank you.
All right, Board President Nichols.
Yes. Thank you so much, Colleen, for your passionate update, and also thank you for being in this role, because it's just nice hearing you come back with another update, each year, and just seeing how the work continues to deepen and strengthen. So thank you for your leadership in this. My question is a little bit around the map. And if something was sent and I haven't quite been as briefed on it yet, forgive me for that. My wondering is, I feel like in a previous presentation, there were at least a couple of board members that were wondering. How will we, or will we look at students who were in our full day 4K programs, and then when they enter our school system, what their gains in literacy or numeracy over time? And I don't know if we're there yet. I mean, I appreciate this body of work in the evaluation. Super promising to see the gains in our full day experience versus our half day. And I think it still leaves me with a question of, for the students who are gaining skills, who are, you know, kind of becoming more confident learners, and then do come into MMSD as kindergartners, when are we, I don't want to say tracking them, are we following that group of students over time?
Third grade is the moment we had indicated, right, that we were gonna.
Oh, okay.
Literacy proficient.
And we made really, and that was why we did the evaluation the way we did. We know that, like, you know, Beth and RAI really talks about how, like, when you implement something new, you often have a dip.
Yeah.
You know, that implementation dip, and, you know, so we talked about that, and we talked about, like, we really wanted to know what the dip was and where we started, so that way we can, you know, we made sure to put a flag on full day 4K kids in Infinite Campus so that we can pull this data
Okay.
and look at this as a longitudinally as
Yes,
they're going
yes.
through. Again, you know, we implemented full day 4K really to provide access to all families, not just to look at one academic growth piece. Like, we really wanted to make sure that all kids had that high quality early learning experience, where they're building those social emotional skills and learning how to do school through all those things. But it's great to see the academic improving as well as we're going through there. So yeah, we're gonna continue to follow them. We're gonna continue to you know, see, like, look at different gains and see what the differences are. And we'll report back, you know, what all of those things are as we continue to work with that and follow those studies and those programs and kids. Yeah.
Do you remember off the top of your head which cohort of 4K students we would end up following? Is it like the 23-24 cohort of 4K students, because the first couple years were so new in implementation, or?
Yeah, that I'm not sure.
Okay.
I don't know, but that would be a good question, because the first couple years, we also were just coming out of COVID.
Right.
We didn't have the same numbers either that were coming back, because many families were not comfortable with sending them back yet. So, so I think that's a good conversation. So when that work does start happening, those will be questions that we're gonna ask. So it was nice to be able to see, like, the 23-24 school year was the first year we started to see some gains. And I was so excited because when I disaggregated my data based off of race, I was seeing that our Black population had higher gains than our white population, and our Hispanic population also was having higher gains within there. So, like, it was so exciting to see that, you know, opportunity gaps closing with that data. So I was just thrilled about it. So.
Yeah, and my question was not in any way to discredit what the evaluation efforts so far. Like, it's super exciting to see, and it just makes me even more curious about the story we might be able to tell if we start kind of following a group of students and then thinking about their transition into our regular public elementary schools, and what that might mean for us later on.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, thank you.
Exciting.
Board Member Serrano?
Yeah, this is close to my heart a lot, because I had a very interesting experience when coming into 4K. But I also learned a lot about it at the time, and my daughter went to a Head Start location. And I sat on the parent advisory council for 5 years, I think total, or it was 3 and then 2 on the regular board. So I had a lot of interaction with them, and I really liked the way that they interacted with families. So I'm kind of curious as to like a few different things about, I thought they were doing some things well. So I'm wondering if how we're being reflective of that. Because it was challenging as a parent who had a student with a disability from birth. There are so many more challenges that you're facing and so many more decisions that are equally as challenging when going into school. And I never felt that I was fully prepared for everything. And I don't even know right now, do you feel that we give families adequate information when coming in and your child is a disability and getting prepared to be part of those bigger meetings? So like my focus is kind of here because it's things that I felt that it could have gone better. I luckily had a lot of support, and a lot of the teachers that we had were really good on providing most of that, but then that's kind of how I got more connected with the school system in general. So do you feel, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we're never doing that. And I think, you know, when we talk about children with disabilities, we're also talking about unique circumstances, each and every child's experience and families, because families have different experiences based off of the needs of the children. So I think I think we do have transitions. We do have some transition points that we really try to focus in on. We started a transition form from 4K to 5K to try to help share some of those resources and the things that worked for families or work for students in the classrooms, and then try to share some of that interaction with families too, like how can we support them. I think we're doing some of those things well, but I think, the larger our system gets, the more places one child has to go. A child at Head Start could go to any one of the 32 elementary schools. So to build that transition might be difficult. So I think there's always ways that we continue to reflect and focus in on that transition. Those transition points between our different grade levels is really important. And I know that we do a lot of work on transitions, and the 4K to 5K transition is one of them. I think family outreach, like we just continue to need to provide more family. And we do that through newsletters in 4K, and we do that through information, and we do that through blurbs about pyramid model and learning social emotional development. There is a part of pyramid model is called Positive Solutions for Families, which is a family engagement piece. That would be another thing that we're hope that Roots and Wings will be helping us to fund these sessions of family engagement across the city. That's coming up. So that will again, be more support, but I think there's never enough. And I think you're gonna have some people who are like, oh, it was great. And everything was super smooth from one to the next. And I think, Head Start also has a focus on transition. So they want to pass off to the next level too. But I think there's always more work to be done. Like that's one of the areas is like, how do we connect with families? We always need to be reflecting on how we're connecting with families.
Yeah, that's true.
I think this is kind of tying into one of our conversations, Cindy, about there's some districts that actually have a nice packet or booklet put together that goes through some of the basic information. So you have something tangible to hand to them, so that not only they can take it in at the time, but you can put extra information in there that might actually engage them ongoing. And some stuff can be very specific to the district and just always be a reference and something that they can hang on to. It's so hard to take in when you're trying to learn it all at the same time.
Yeah.
And the stuff that DPI offers is minimal.
Yes.
I would really like to see it come from them. Like, but that's probably a bigger challenge possibly in order to get them to do it, because then we need people to actually provide it on purpose at the table.
Yeah.
And then know what they're talking about, and be able to back it up.
Mhm.
Because it's more about just giving it to someone than to, and I was actually wondering about like the advocacy piece. I'm all about that. And Head Start used to have like a day at the Capitol where they would bring parents with, and walk them through that. Do you do something similar? Do you guys collaborate together?
We will often go and participate in supporting them during their day of advocacy. We will often go and support them at that time. And other just early care and education advocacy work. There's an early childhood crisis in our communities, and it's very difficult for childcare centers to remain open and fund their programs. And so if we don't help advocate and support our community partners, they're going to go away. And if they go away, they will have no infant and toddler programs. And so, our legislatures really need to think about how are they supporting infant toddler programs as well. Because our infant toddler programs are more costly to implement for our childcare. So we continue to stand with them and advocate and support the community approach model, make sure that we're a strong community.
When you say, I really appreciate that, because I do think that's really, really essential to continue to grow. When you say we though, are you saying you in the program, or we as in you have the families coordinated as well?
I think when I say we, I mean we as a district. I think our leadership supports early learning and their advocacy. And so if I find something that I bring to leadership, they are all super supportive of that information and help provide direction. I think also we being all of us who provide 4K programming, whether it's our principals, teachers, educational assistants, directors, community directors, we get together and we talk about those different things for advocacy, for early learning. Our district also is part of statewide pieces like promoting early learning. The Promoting Early Childhood Conference is a state 4K conference that we participate in. We'll be providing information and professional development sessions for our Midwest Pyramid Model Summit, where again, we advocate for our community approach model and understanding that, together we're strong and individually we're not. So the we means all of us. We don't have a parent advocacy piece yet, and we should. So thank you for bringing that up. We'll think about that and how do we build that?
No, it can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
I went to joint finance last week, and so there was a lot to talk about education in and of itself, but I actually don't remember, and that was a very specific one with the ones that they did. I don't know how many were for early learning, but really something to get the parents involved so that it's not always on you guys as well, and helps kind of engage them going forward. I think the last piece I wanted to touch on though is do you feel like you have a lot of turnover in staffing, and what does that look like? Because I know that was another challenge with Head Start, was dealing with that. Heavy turnovers.
It is a challenge, and it's a challenge because, when the Department of Public Instruction created Community Approach, the thought process behind it was really good. And that we need to support our community partners, and that we'll bring 4K and early learning together. But the requirements of a DPI licensed teacher, we have teachers that are in early care and education sites that they chose to be in the early care and education site for 20, 30 years. They are veteran teachers. They don't have a DPI license necessarily because they never wanted to teach in an elementary school. They only wanted to teach in an early care facility. So like, so the licensing is difficult. So we have turnover, you know, oftentimes in our early care and education sites because of that DPI teacher license is very difficult. We help walk them through the process. Our licensing provides them the information to get emergency licensed. And so we do get emergency licenses for those teachers in our early care and education sites. And then they get that DPI license, but so often, once they get that DPI license, then, you know, sometimes they come to either our school district or another school district, and they are expanding their educational opportunities as well. So, so staffing turnover in our early care and education sites is difficult, and it's something that, you know, we continue. Our early care and education sites are very competitive with their salaries, which is huge. I know Head Start asks every year, they ask for our salary schedule in order to try to match our salary schedules because they, again, you know, they're trying to be competitive in order to retain staff. They do such great work.
Yeah, well, that's interesting to say that because I've talked with one of my daughter's teachers at one time and she said that recertifying or something, her license was like really challenging to meet that financially. There's other, if you heard to find other avenues for teachers to make it easier to continue where they're.
There are some different avenues and sometimes different sites will even pay for that. That's part of their package and that. So like, so it just kind of depends individually on the sites and what they're trying to do to advocate.
All right.
It's a complex, it's a complex process for those of us that have DPI license. It's such a complex process that it's hard for us to, like, I understand the licensing process is super important, but like, when are we gonna start talking about an apprenticeship model for 4K specifically in our early care and education sites? Like, that would really be a great advocacy piece, but that, again, this is not something we as a school district alone can do. This is something that the Department of Public Instruction has to change their licensing process. It's very complex and difficult.
What changes that from site to site? You said some have it, some don't. What's the difference? Or
the licensing process is the same, but a lot depends on the directors and their policies, their individual policies and protocols of how they're supporting their staff. So,
okay.
Yeah. Okay. And we're always here to support or answer any questions that they might have as well.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions from board members, so I'm going to turn it over to Board Vice President Maya Pearson to talk us through our sexual harassment policy.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we have.
Okay.
Okay, so each board member should have one of the clean versions and as well as second read red line version based off of the information that we previously had. She's coming. Thank you. And we're gonna hey. They're coming. Okay. I guess, can we wait for a couple minutes until? Yay. Come on to the table, y'all.
Do you want?
Yeah. Hey. Thank you guys for hanging out. Yeah, we have a robust conversation about early education and our middle school math. Middle school. So each board member should have with us, a second read red line version that will incorporate some of the, changes that from our first read, the things that we needed to update. And then you should have the version that is the clean, second read, but like with no red lines. So it's the one that we are looking to review and then hopefully approve, at our regular board meeting. And we have today with us, Petra, who is part of our policy committee. And then also, Sarah, who is also, our expert today. So, I don't know if you guys want to bump us off and begin.
Yeah, well, I think one thing we wanted to sort of open the floor. I know that folks have had more time now to look at the red line and policy, and we did have an opportunity previously to address questions. Sarah had addressed some questions that people had. And so I also want to acknowledge that Martha is with us now and hasn't necessarily had an opportunity to look through the policy. So maybe it would be helpful to sort of give our historical context that we gave previously in terms of what led up to the changes that we've implemented in this policy here. And before I turn it over to Sarah, I would just reference that all the changes that we're proposing today are just what's found in that red line there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sarah Ghazi Muradi. I also work alongside Petra as Associate Legal Counsel for the district. One of my roles here is I get to be our decision maker for Title IX matters. Prior to joining the district, I worked as at a firm as outside counsel for MMSD, where I advise school districts across the state on Title IX matters. I've presented on Title IX. I've helped prepare Title IX policies for other school districts across the state. So suffice that to say, Title IX is like a very quirky law that I love despite all of its complications. So going back to the historical background that Petra was referencing previously, Title IX kind of is like the unfortunate stepchild of the law that's kind of had a very unusual treatment throughout the years. So I think it's important to talk about the historical context that it comes from when we talk about it. Title IX in itself just prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. And for a long time, the law existed as it was, but it didn't have these procedural requirements that we see here today. It wasn't until 2020 when the Trump administration came out with these first Title IX regulations that were really a big deal because they required this process for all schools, K through 12 and higher ed, to go through in terms of notice, investigation, and different kinds of requirements that we follow. After those 2020 regulations came out, there was a lot of legal across the country about what discrimination on the basis of sex means. One of those cases happened here in the Seventh Circuit. It's Whitaker versus Kenosha Unified School District. And that case says that discrimination on the basis of sex in the 2020 regulations includes discrimination on the basis of gender identity, on the basis of sexual orientation, on the basis of sex stereotypes. It had a really, really broad definition of discrimination on the basis of sex because they were taking from the Supreme Court's recent decision in a case called Bostick versus Clayton County, which interpreted another law, not Title IX, but we kind of read these interpretations together. So because MMSD, we sit in the Seventh Circuit, we're in Wisconsin, we are subject to the Whitaker case. So back in 2020, legal counsel back then created this policy that included a very broad discrimination on the basis of sex, gender, sexual orientation, all encompassed under Title IX. So famously, the Biden administration passes these 2024 regulations that bring the rest of the country to where we are here in the Seventh Circuit. So while we already had this precedent, a lot of the country didn't have it. Once those 2024 regulations came out in May, we know this, we just lived through it. A lot of the country was really upset with this expanded definition. So we saw legal challenges across the country, also in our home state of Wisconsin as well, which resulted in an injunction against the 2024 regulations, preventing them from going into effect, which eventually led to January 9th. A federal court said,
No, the Biden administration went beyond their power in adopting the 2024 regulations. What's very important to remember is the Biden administration's Department of Education did not lodge an appeal. They let that decision stand. They were the people that could have appealed it and said, hold on, wait a minute, we want these regulations. They did not do that. So then with the change of administration, with the Trump administration coming in, their Department of Education said, yes, we're going to continue with this federal court decision that happened in January. However, all of that is to say that even if we go back to the 2020 regulations, because we're here in Wisconsin and we have this Whitaker standard, our policy really does not change in terms of who we are protecting. We are still protecting the same students. There is no one who could have filed a complaint under these old regulations that is no longer barred from doing so. And we have a lot more protections in this policy. It's a really, really cleverly crafted policy. I'm not the first one who wrote it, so I'm not tooting my own horn. But I just want to offer that historical context because we all know about this dear colleague letter that happened at the end of January after the administration changed. Yeah, I see you have a question.
Yeah, so I wanna familiarize the board with the Whitaker case itself. So in that case, you had a student who was being asked by their school to wear an identifier, like a wristband, that would let people know that they were trans and would also let staff know in general to direct them to the bathroom that they did not align with. And their school was forced to pay them a really significant settlement. Can you tell us how much that district ended up compensating that student for what was considered discrimination on the basis of race and gender expression by the Seventh Circuit?
So I'll be candid, I'm not aware of the settlement amount, but I can speak more to that case if that's important. So in that case, Ash Whitaker, he's a transgender boy. He had been known by all of his peers as a transgender boy. No one knew that he was biologically assigned female. So he starts going to school and school staff end up finding out about his biological sex, and they ask him to use the bathroom assigned with his biological sex at birth rather than his gender living at. He had been completely transitioned and only known by his peers as a boy. And he ended up having kidney issues. He ended up having like grades slipped. It was like, it took a huge toll on him because he was told to basically only use one bathroom in the school that was like a gender neutral bathroom with a lock, or like go to the bathroom of his sex assigned at. And so, yeah, that basically the court in that decision read Title IX to say, no, this is discrimination on the basis of sex. But Petra, do you have more information you want to add about that case?
So it says the settlement was $800,000. So yes, a significant amount.
Yeah, so I just think that part of our aligning with this policy is working in the best fiduciary industry interests of this district, and that according to the Seventh Circuit, this student was owed really significant damages for the discrimination that he experienced. I greatly appreciate you going into greater detail in terms of what happened to Ash.
Okay. So yeah, we can go ahead and go for questions. It's fair, it's fair.
And if you're able to review it later, more in depth, have any follow-up questions, like please feel free to reach out to Sarah and I.
Is there anything that you feel like you would point out to me as, you know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah, so in addition, you'll see that we have this expanded definition of gender that you'll see at the top that includes sex stereotypes, sexual orientation. One thing that I also want to draw your attention to is, so we have sexual harassment that's in compliance with the statute of Title IX, but we also have this category section as sexual misconduct. So the change that really is significant about the 2020 regulations to 2024 regulations is there's a change in standard, right? So we have this sexual misconduct sub-N, which has a lower standard to it such that any case that might not have been able to be processed under sexual harassment can still be processed under sexual misconduct, and complainants still have the same opportunities for the same remedies, the same sanctions against respondents. It's really no impact. It just makes sure that complainants have different vehicles within this policy to allege their harm.
I'd like to catch all, and the sexual misconduct that Sarah just referred to is on the third page. And it's directly above section 2 general provisions. And I'm just looking to see if there's anything else that I feel like would make sense for us to call out right now. Yeah, I think that does. I think your point about the expanded definition covers it. Yeah, because you'll see like it is pretty minor changes throughout the policy itself.
Yeah, very specific.
Yeah.
We had a pretty robust conversation the first go. And I think we brought Sarah in to give more context if folks had more questions. Because there were some pretty in-depth questions that we had a chance to discuss. So, yeah.
Is there anything that resonates with you that's stuck out?
No, I think one of the things that the general counsel team really made a point of adding was they expanded that first piece of like the protected classes. So
yeah,
I thought that was really great add there. So
awesome. Thank you.
Let's go. Any questions? Blair, any questions? I don't see anything.
I don't see any other questions from board members, and we do have another meeting to
Yeah,
get to.
so
I'm gonna entertain a motion to adjourn unless there's something else.
no, I was just gonna say this will be just coming back to us at the regular board meeting next month for voting.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you so much.
For all adjourned.
Are we going